This time I'll call the meeting of the Marshall City Council to order with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to welcome everyone here this evening. We have an agenda before us. I'll move to agenda item number 2, which is to consider approving the agenda. Are there any changes to the agenda this evening? Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Motion by Steve.
Second.
Seconded by Craig to approve the minute or the agenda as it has been prepared. We'll move to a vote. The motion passes. Agenda item number 3. Agenda item number 3 is to consider the approval of the minutes of the regular council meeting that was held on August 22nd, 2017, as well as a work session that was held also on August 22nd. So the council has the minutes of both of those meetings. Are there any corrections to note at this time? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve.
A motion to approve.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by Jim to approve the minutes of both of those meetings. We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 4. Agenda item number 4 is a public hearing. This is a public hearing on the modified tax increment financing plan and the tax increment financing district 1-14. I'll call on Carla Drown to introduce this public hearing, and then she'll also will introduce Terry Heaton. Carla Drown is our finance director for the City of Marshall.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Tonight, we have Terry Heaton with us from Springstead as our consultant that will go through our TIF plan.
Thank you for saving me, please.
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, we prepared a PowerPoint so that we could more succinctly describe all the things that are required and a little bit of information about a tax increment financing district, along with some specifics about the tax increment district that's being proposed for this evening. We're going to start out, this is about a 15-minute presentation, so I'll try to go quickly. Just to start, for the members of the public and people who are unfamiliar with that, what is a tax increment financing district? Well, it's a method of capturing tax-based growth resulting from new development. And it captures the new local taxes, which is called increment, and it allows you to pay for the public improvements that are necessary in order for the development to occur. And there is a fixed time frame for capturing this revenue, and then after the time period runs out, then the new added tax base or the new development is then added to the tax base that the local governments levy taxes against. So it helps share and have a larger tax base to spread those against. In a simple definition, it's the difference between the property taxes with the new development to the property tax, or without the new development to those with the new development. So it's really just the difference of what you're adding in. And to illustrate that, there's a tax base now, and in the tax increment district we're proposing, it's really just soil. And so that is the part that already, when it's privately owned, the city, the county, the school district would levy against, and that doesn't change. And then what happens, what gets developed on here will generate additional taxes. And proportionately, this is probably a lot bigger because there will be a lot more value there. But this part that's shaded is the part that's collected for an 8-year period, and those revenues go to pay for the public improvements. And then when it's done, this becomes part of the regular tax base, and so this and whatever else is added is how you've grown the tax base by using this tool. Municipalities, they use the TIF to stimulate development and job growth where it wouldn't otherwise occur. It encourages development and uses such as low-income housing. One of the key things that I like to say, sometimes not only does it bring in bricks and mortar that adds to the tax base, but sometimes there's job growth, a lot of jobs that come in with these. Enhances the tax base, it facilitates infrastructure improvements, and in this case you're building a road and using monies from this particular development to pay for this, as opposed to just a general obligation levy, or just a levy across the whole tax base. And coordinates development, sometimes by placing these and creating a whole plan for several TIF districts. You're creating a plan that, of course, with the vision, then you're more likely to have the development occur. The approval process is there's a request for assistance review, and so then the plan is distributed. It's sent to various parties, including a 60-day approval process where the county and the school board are given notice. The Planning Commission reviews it, and then there is a public hearing which is being held right now or tonight. The other finding that has to be put in place is a finding that the proposed development would not be reasonably expected to occur solely through private investment within the reasonably foreseeable future. And that finding has been made with regard to this district. The public improvements that one can use to pay for or use the tax increment for are defined in state law. They're limited to roads and streets, utilities, bridges, interchanges, parking, sidewalks and walkways, and soft costs related to the above. And in this case, this tax increment district being proposed will pay for roads. The costs that are not allowed, again, there's a lot of rules with tax increment financing districts, and they're limited. So it doesn't just support the city of Marshall as a whole, a general fund, or anything like that. And it cannot be used, even as a capital, it cannot be used for public buildings like a city center, public safety, public works building, culture and recreation facilities, community centers, golf courses. And there is an allowable 10% administration cost. If you don't use it all, the rest of it can be used for projects, but up to 10% of the revenues can be used for administering. And again, there are a lot of rules, and it does take extra time. So staff time can get reimbursed, along with attorneys, consultants, and anyone else that helps manage a TIF district. Common ways that the tax increment, the revenue gets used to pay for improvements. The first is a general obligation tax increment bond. That is the kind of bond that the City of Marshall has authorized for this project. And as long as 20% of the debt service is paid with tax increment revenues, you can qualify for this type of bond. There are also options for pay-as-you-go notes. It's typically a smaller amount, or an amount that a developer can come up with on the front end that you can reimburse them for over time. And to the extent possible, Marshall has been employing that. And the last is a revenue bond, and to the extent that the developer has a lot of benefit, and it's a lot more for going towards projects that benefit them more than the city, that's usually the route to go. But in this case, this is a road that will benefit not only this project, but anyone in the industrial park area. There are some statutory findings that have to be made in order for the TIF district to qualify. It has to afford maximum opportunity consistent with sound needs of the city as a whole for development by private enterprise. It has to conform to general plans for the development of the city as a whole, and the Planning Commission will be reviewing it tomorrow for that reason. And that the project itself qualifies as a TIF district. And as I mentioned before, there are a number of TIF districts, and there's a number of items that qualify it for each type. And in this case, we've gone through this project. That process, and the result is that this qualifies as an economic development district, and it has a limit of 8 years as a result of that. And this is just a repeat that, we mentioned that on the front end of some of the things you have to do, but again, it's actually a statutory finding that you have to meet a but-for test, that this development would not occur but for the use of the tax increment financing. This is a map that shows the project area. And so this is a plan that's being amended, and the reason for the amendment is this is the yellow areas are all of the are encompassed in this project area. And what we're doing is this area right here, this square, is being added in to the overall project area. And there are TIF districts. These are all TIF districts within this overall project area, but we first have to amend the project area, and then we can create the TIF district. This is the actual TIF district that fits in that little square. You can see the angle down here where the road is. And so this is actually 6 parcels that are within that little square. Specific to the TIF district, within that redevelopment district, just to give you a little detail about that, the plan calls for the development of new manufacturing, production, and distribution, a distribution facility within that project area. Again, I mentioned it's 8 years long. That's how many years the revenue is captured, and then it can become part of the tax base. And the construction is estimated to begin in late 2017 or early 18. There's a budget that's adopted as part of the plan, and so the estimated cost is about $2.2 million for public improvements. There's some interests, including the bonds that would be issued in a few weeks by the city. There may be other financing included in that. Administrative expenses could go up to $340,000, and again, that's throughout the life of the bond, totaling about $3.4 million, and that is also the proposed estimate of the tax increment revenue that would be generated. The timetable is that this evening the HRA just met and did adopt the resolution approving the TIF plan in the TIF district, or the modified TIF plan, and we are now about to have the public hearing by the City Council to approve both. Tomorrow, the Planning Commission would adopt a resolution that the plan conforms to the city's comprehensive plan. September 26th is when the bonds would be sold. And then this isn't an absolute, this is more of a reminder for everyone so that we make sure it's one of those last-minute administrative things you don't want to forget, and that is to file the plan with the county and the state. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Okay, thank you, Terry. We'll open it up for questions as part of the public hearing, either from the council or from members of the audience. And if members of the audience have input as part of the public hearing, we'll need to have you come up to the podium and use the microphone because we are also on cable access television. So any input? Stephen.
Mr. Mayor, when we look at the map, and can you go back to that map? Carla, do you have that clicker that I can use? I'll just bring it up to me and I'll use it. Oh, you got one. Perfect.
Little button on the side. Little button on the side, Steve. Turn around.
There. Got it. Okay. I'm not. Apparently I'm not savvy.
Yeah, that's the one I use.
You see it? There we go. Okay. All this stuff right here, that's under TIF financing or TIF district right now. Isn't that all, I mean, this line right here and this stuff, is that residential areas?
Terry, do you want to address that or?
Unless you want to say.
Well, I can start on it. This is the project area, which is the large geographic area, and then in each of those areas could be districts in that large project area. So this is like the large outline of where TIF districts could occur. Now, yes, there's a variety of zoning there. Some's commercial, some's residential, some's housing, and then there are some districts in that area too. So, Terry, you can correct what I said there.
Mr. Mayor, that is correct. This is the area where TIF districts can be created within. So this is the overall project area. So they can be created. And they can be created in residential or commercial areas, depending on the type.
The other part of your question might be the taxes that are generated from within the project area still go to the the school district, the county, and the city normally like they would do. So.
Do you want that or? Oh.
I have a question here about the duration of the TIF district, and I know there are people here that have concerns about that. There's a maximum duration period, But in the plan itself, it says the authority will decertify the TIF district earlier upon fulfillment of all district obligations. So if we have enough money set aside to satisfy the obligations of that district, then it should be decertified, shouldn't it be?
Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, if that's what if the plan's obligations are completed, that's your intent today. And if everything is fulfilled on this TIF district, the rules are such that today there isn't a lot more that you can do once it's created. There's a lot of rules that have been created, so a current one being developed today, that's what would happen.
Are you saying with regard to other TIF districts, the rules would not be this?
They all have different rules, and some that are created in different years have different rules about when they can be decertified.
So you'd have to look at the plan or whatever for that particular district. But
Right.
for this district, as soon as there's enough money to pay off the obligations, it should be decertified then.
At a
That's the
maximum
plan
of
today.
8 years.
Right?
On or before.
That's right.
Okay.
Other input or questions as part of the public hearing? Glenn, you have something?
Yes, I have.
Go ahead.
Oh, did you?
No, go ahead.
Okay. Well, in the resolution itself, it says that the authority transmitted the modified redevelopment plan and the TIF plan to the Planning Commission of the city for its review and requested the Planning Commission's written comments on such plans. I think that this is being sent to the Planning Commission tomorrow, isn't it? So it's going to be hard for the Planning Commission to get its comments to us before we vote on this, isn't it? And shouldn't we be considering their written comments before we vote on the plan?
Go ahead.
The resolution as it's worded, we did check with bond counsel on that, and the answer is, that was our concern with timing, and they said that it's assumed that it's conditioned upon approval by them. And their main role is to say, does this line up with your comprehensive plan? And, it's an industrial park, it's manufacturing, and so I think there's a foregone conclusion that it does, and it's more of a formality. But indeed, if they did for some reason find something that wasn't in conformance, then your approval is subject to their approving it.
I mean, does it say that, though, that our approval is subject to their approval in any place here in the resolution? It just seems like, well, why wouldn't we listen or read their written comments before we make a decision on this rather than passing it and then getting their written comments later?
I guess because it's considered, in this case, because it's such a clear conforming
So
use, that it's a foregone, it's assumed to be more of a formality, but it's a state law that they actually take the action.
So the Planning Commission, we just tell them it's a formality, just go ahead and approve it. We don't really need any comments. Is that what we're
No.
saying to them?
No, what we're saying is it's a fairly clear, at this point, as an outsider looking in, there wasn't anything like a red flag that bond counsel was concerned about. So they're proceeding on the assumption that you could approve it this evening, and if you would prefer not to, you could bring it back and approve it on the 26th when the bonds are sold, if they get a clear reading, if that's a real big concern. On the other hand, if you approve it tonight, it can't be finalized because one of the steps is you have to have the Planning Commission review it and approve it. So whether it says it or not, it won't become a TIF district if they don't give you that resolution that passes.
Glenn Olson, you had a comment?
Can you go to the district plan? Is it all right if improvements take place outside of the district? Can they be reimbursed by the TIF money? So we have, part of the project is a stormwater pond and piping that goes from that area to the diversion channel. Is it all right if those costs are included in the increment reimbursement? If it's outside the district?
As long as it's within the project area and it doesn't exceed 20% of the increment.
That it won't. It will be in the project area.
Okay.
If you go back to the project area, just want to make sure of that. Yes, it is.
Is there any member
you,
of the
Brian.
audience that has input that they want to give Charlie?
Mr. Mayor, while Charlie's coming up, the council made a good point here too, that our motion could be to approve it conditionally to the approval of the planning commission, so it can be covered in the motion.
My name is Charles Sano. I'm a county commissioner, 1109 Birch Street, Unit 4. We had sent you guys all letters. As county commissioners, we unanimously agreed to, the fact that we believe that TIF is a good tool. It's a good tool to create economic growth. But like all tools, there's ways to use tools and there's ways to misuse tools. And when you misuse tools, things get hurt. And we want to make a couple suggestions. First of all, when your TIF districts have satisfied their bills and satisfied their obligations, decertify them. Don't keep collecting up slush funds full of money. I mean, right now you're sitting on $4.6 million minus a couple $100,000 in expenses. You're at $4.4 million in excess money that's been collected. That money's not the county's money or the city's money or the school district's money. That's taxpayers' money. And they should have the direction of where it goes and what happens with it. Now, there's the district last year. We were told they're going to give, you guys are going to decertify and we're getting money back for it. Well, $696,000 of that district money never went back. It's still sitting in the fund, as it's been reported to us. You got one from 13, one from 11, and one from 9. They're all sitting there with excess funds in. Just sitting there. Well, now I know that when you get to pre-90 districts, I know the rules change. And you can use them for whatever you want and a lot of different things. But I don't think the government and the legislatures, when they set this tool up, ever set it up so it could be used as a fund to build up excess money. Now in the Parkway 3 edition, you got $3 million excess money sitting there. That's over collected. Most of the housing districts in the state of Minnesota are decertified, or I shouldn't say the most, the average is 11 years. This is on the 24th year going on 25. So we're saying, to be fair, decertify these things and give the money back to the taxpayers where it's supposed to go, instead of using it as a hidden slush fund that we can use and transfer around and do a shell game with. I don't think that's, though it's legally right, ethically, morally, I don't think it is. I think you guys need to weigh that through. Now, we'll give you one suggestion as county commissioners. You're sitting on $4 million worth of funds in those accounts. You need $2.2 million for this project. Use part of that $4 million and you'll save yourself $1,224,000 worth of interest and expenses from administrative costs. That's saving the taxpayers $1.24 million. I think that's significant. I think you guys really need to sit back and consider how these are being done and what you got in those funds. And is it fair? Is it fair to sit on $3 million surplus? Is that the right thing to do? I personally don't think it is. So, I mean, I know that this last election year, there's quite a few businessmen, and several of them called me and wanted me to donate money to run some ads to try to change the course of what the city's doing. And I contributed. But there's a real strong census from the business people out there that we need to change the direction we're headed. I don't have a problem with this TIF district. It'll create jobs, it'll make space, it'll do all kinds of stuff. But if you want to pass the what-if test, what if you used your own money you already got pooled instead of creating another TIF district? What if? At that point, I don't think you pass the what-if test, because I think you can do it without the TIF district.
Could I just respond to that a little bit? I agree with Mr. Sano's comments, and we certainly want to be fair to the school districts and the county. And I talked to the finance director today, and I think that that's probably something the city will be looking at as far as when we hire a new city administrator, but it's something that's going to be discussed and acted upon. And I don't know what the result would be, but I think I certainly share your concerns, and I hope that the city will do something about it.
You know, if we over collected a couple $100,000, because we just forgot that last year and we just went ahead and did it, this district's taking in Parkway Edition, $411,000 a year. To over collect $3 million, that's more than oversight, in my mind. That's definitely more than oversight. So I think you guys need to look at that.
Other input as part of the public hearing?
Again, my concern is that there is the but-for test. And the but-for test is if we didn't do TIF financing, this development would not take place. A private developer would not come in and make the necessary improvements. And I'm not convinced that we would meet the but-for test. Another concern I have is it's my understanding that when we're done with this project, making the improvements and so forth, that the land is going to be worth approximately $85,000 an acre. And if you take that times the 163 some acres that is shown on the plan here, 163.56 acres, that's about $13.9 million. And I guess my concern is that what's going to happen here is that the city of Marshall is going to be making a gift of $13.9 million worth of property free to some company. And that's a large transfer of wealth to some individuals and some companies. And I'm not sure the city of Marshall should be doing that. And we're making wealthy individuals even wealthier by making these types of gifts. And I am not in favor of TIF financing. I believe it's not the business of government to pick winners and losers and subsidize some companies and not other companies. And I like a level fair playing field for all companies. And so I'm concerned about the TIF financing.
Other input as part of the public hearing?
I have a quick question. Carla, and I don't doubt your numbers, Charlie, but are Charlie's numbers correct?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other input as part of the public hearing?
One more comment. So I understand that in the past we've been using TIF money from some districts to subsidize other TIF districts. Is that happened in the past where we have additional funds in one area and they're transferred to help finance another area?
In looking in the back in the history, yes, we have loaned money from one TIF district to the other.
So and eventually the money is repaid, or how does that work?
In a couple of situations, just this year, yes, we did repay it back from one to the other. There's one outstanding loan that we're doing further research on.
Okay. And just because we have these TIF districts doesn't necessarily guarantee that they're going to be successful. It all depends on whether we do attract certain businesses into those areas or not to justify the TIF financing. These are all estimates, and they're based on what if. What happens if somebody comes in and wants to do the development. So nothing's guaranteed as far as any of this is concerned. Is that right?
That is correct.
Okay.
Thank you, Carla. Any other input as part of the public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close this public hearing?
So move.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. The next action then would be to consider the resolution that would approve the modified redevelopment plan for project number 1 and establish the TIF District 1-14 in the TIF plan. Are there questions about that resolution?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Going on to Mr. Sano's comments, and this is to Carla and to Terry. So as we move through this and we reconcile the balances that are remaining in the TIF, we move forward with this. As we move forward, if we need to, we can transfer funds that are in excess now in TIF to also modify over to support payment on this TIF, correct?
Mr. Mayor, Councilmember Schaefer, it was mentioned, there can be a lot of risks. I mean, and part of it is we're putting values out there that are estimates today. There's timing, you're counting on a developer to come in. And then once they're in place, the economy, the markets can change too. So we don't know, the budgets are out there. And so as you're indicating, that's the reason that there have been some transfers from the past. The money that is held, right now you have about a $2.5 million bond out there. Some of this is earmarked that if that one doesn't come through as developed, some of the monies that are held from the pre-90 district would go towards that. And also the bonds that you're issuing now, we have estimates in there. And just as you suggest, some of that could be used with this project as well.
Thank you. And that's to protect the general fund.
Protect the general fund and to protect so that you don't have to levy for it because
Right.
you would utilize that as your contingency.
Yeah, continue to use TIF to support TIF, and the general fund goes to general fund appropriations.
That's the plan. And hopefully you don't have to use it and you
Sure.
can do what they're suggesting and redistribute at some point, but that's what it could be used for.
Thank you, Terry.
Other questions about the resolution? If not, I would entertain a motion.
I'd make the motion to approve, and with the comment that cities do not have a lot of other options other than TIF, and TIF has worked very well for us in this city, and so with that, make a motion to approve the resolution.
Motion by John. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second that motion and then also make the comment that in support of what Councilman DeKramer said, we compete for our industry bigger than the area of our surrounding communities. We're also competing with a neighboring state who tends to forward a more favorable business climate. And if we want to maintain a growth atmosphere in Marshall, and I think we've had a pretty healthy growth because of the support that we get from the community and the business, I think we need to continue to look forward. If we look back, we don't move forward. If we look forward, hopefully with wisdom and some balance and control, that we can continue to support Marshall and keep a healthy environment. So with that, I thank you.
So motion by John, seconded by Craig. Now discussion on the motion.
Steve. Mr. Mayor, I appreciate Mr. Sano's comments. I think that it is a powerful tool, but it's one of those things where we have to decertify, and once the bill is paid, stop, and then reassess every time. I don't see just borrowing and borrowing and borrowing. If we look at our own pockets, you don't keep going into debt into perpetuity and paying Peter or stealing from Peter to pay Paul. We're all taxpayers. We're all paying it anyway. And the but-for test, yes, we're in competition. We want this business to come. If we already have excess funds, I kind of lean with Mr. Sano as let's pay for it, and that way it keeps our debt and then people will decide to come to Marshall because A, they've got their debt under control, B, they use the tools correctly when and if they need to, and they don't keep going into perpetuity. I'll remember when I was in California, we had a bridge that was taxed, and it was there for 35 years before they dropped not only the tax, but the toll that went over it. They were just making money, and the tax and the toll were supposed to be to pay for the bridge. And they paid for that thing probably 35 times before somebody finally cut the toll off. So,
Thank you, Steve. Other discussion on the motion?
As I look at this, it's an 8-year TIF we're looking at. If we can, I agree with Mr. Meister down there, Mr. Bearcooler, $2.2 million now or $3.42 million in 8 years doesn't make a lot of sense to spend an extra $1.3 million or $1.2 million for 8-year loan. If it was a longer-term note, that could make sense, but that's a very high interest rate. You figure the administration card costing your interest payments. We're increasing that note by 33% in 8 years.
Other discussion on the motion?
Just, again, the question, I thought in the plan itself, it says when we have enough funds to meet the obligations, it's decertified.
That's correct.
So for this one, we're not going to borrow from for other districts. But what you're saying, Mr. Schaefer is saying, if we can't meet the payments on this one, we want to borrow from the other districts. We could. And so the issue boils down to, do we do that? Do we keep playing that game of borrowing from other TIF districts, or do we decertify and put that property on the tax roll so that the county and the school district benefit from higher taxes? I mean, that's a choice we're going to have, and I think that the city council is going to have to discuss that issue and decide, what's the right thing to do. And it's not necessarily doing what's legal. It's doing what's right or what we think is fair to all of the different parties. And Mr. Sano mentioned the word fairness a number of times, and I agree with him. We want to be fair to both the county and the school district, and not necessarily always do what's in our best interest, but in the best interest of the entire group of entities, the county and the school district and the city.
And just as a point of clarification too, I'd like to say that in my comment or my question to Terry was truly for an explanation. That wasn't, I'm not a lawyer already knowing the answer to the question. I asked the question because I really wanted to know. And I'm not proposing that we sit on a balance of surplus TIF money just in case this TIF doesn't fly. I think where we can decertify and return that back to the tax roll, absolutely, that's what we need to do. I just wanted to be clear with the difference in the laws because I'm not that well versed in the previous TIF things and understand that there is a way to balance these as they develop out. And it's been pretty beneficial for the city to move advantageously when these things have come forward. And obviously we can't count on them always loading as fast as the previous ones have. But, there is a pretty solid plan out here for this one. Again, granted, it's not locked in. But, I just want to have a clear understanding. And I agree, and I don't disagree with what Mr. Sano said. And I think when there is surplus funds there and we have the ability to return it, we absolutely have to look seriously at doing that and getting things back where they belong and balancing our collection and our expenditures.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote on the motion on the table. That motion does pass. Move then to agenda item number 5. Agenda item number 5, this is also a public hearing. This is a public hearing on South 2nd Street, Lucille Street, Maple Street, William Street reconstruction. I will call on Glenn Olson to conduct this public hearing, Director of Public Works City Engineer, following Glenn's brief presentation on the project and the proposed assessments on this project. Then we'll open up for public comment at that time. Glenn?
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Maybe if you could explain to them the process for
Sure.
not objection.
Sure. So the purpose of the public hearing is to explain the project and the assessments that are on the project. So if there, when we get to the public input part, what I'd ask, certainly similar to the last comment, is folks would need to come up, use the microphone. There's also a pad of paper there so that you can identify yourself and then the name. If anyone is objecting to their assessment, that needs to be done in writing before the conclusion of this public hearing. So there's another pad of paper that's on the table there. So if people say, here's my address, I object, that preserves your right to appeal that assessment into the future.
And it needs to be signed by the property owner.
Right. So we'll take time so that, we're not going to rush through this. We'll take time so if anyone has that intent that you're able to do that. So with that, Glenn, I'll turn it back to you.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. First of all, what I'd like to do is give a brief statement about our assessment process, but I'd like to do it just once for both of our hearings tonight. We have 2 hearings on 2 separate projects, but the process and methods are identical for both projects. So I'll be trying to address the general special assessment process, and then we'll just do specific ones on the specific projects.
Some of the people are having a hard time here.
Okay.
Thank you.
So first of all, I want to hand out to the council, if not all of them might be aware of what we present at the public informational meetings concerning special assessments for every project. And I'll hand that out. If you want to just stand some now.
Sure.
Okay. And I really do intend to read these very quickly because it kind of sets the tone for how we do our special assessments. This is the brief description. Water main and water service line replacements up to and including the curb stops are paid for by MMU. Sanitary sewer main replacements are paid for by the wastewater fund. Storm sewer main and catch basin replacements are paid for by the surface water management utility fund. Street replacement costs associated with the replacement of the water, sewer, and storm sewer main are also paid for by the respective utilities. ADA required sidewalk ramps at intersections are paid for by the city. The remaining street replacement costs, including public sidewalks, are split 50-50 between the property owners and the city. The private sanitary sewer connections, including the Y and the service line to the property line, are the responsibility of each property owner attached to the sewer main. The removal and replacement or additional area of individual driveways are the responsibility of the property owner, as each driveway is different in size and serves only the property involved. The removal and or replacement of private sidewalks from the curb to the property the walk-ups are the responsibility of the property owner. So if it's not a public sidewalk, the private property owner is responsible for private walks. The maximum street assessment for residential properties will be $5,500 for assessment certified in this year. The maximum does not include the individual improvements for the sanitary sewer service line, removal and replacement of private driveways, sidewalk walk-ups, or new additional driveway improvements within the city right-of-way. And then it goes on to talk about how assessments are normally paid. Major projects for a period of 10 years at 2% over the rate of the last bonding that the city had. Now, this is the 2nd Street project area, which is fairly large area. Everything that's crosshatched is in the area. However, south of George Street, all of the area south of George Street was all MMUs. So if anyone is here from that section of South 2nd Street, the reason they didn't get an assessment was because that was 100% MMU water main replacement. Now, if you go to the summary sheet, the cost breakdown sheet, I want to talk about that just a minute. So if you could go to the cost breakdown sheet. The cost breakdown sheet shows the participation of what I just talked about. It takes a little while. And it shows, okay, so if you, yeah, and if you could make that a little bit smaller so you can see the whole thing. The entire project there was about $1.5 million, of which about 25%, 24.2% was assessed. All the remaining 75% was paid for by the utility companies or ad valorem in the city's participation in the 50% of the street costs that were not associated with surface water, MMU, or the wastewater fund. And you can see that MMU's participation here is slightly higher, significantly higher than the other entities because they had 100% of that area south of George Street. So if you look at the total project cost and you look at the assessments that were levied against the properties, it was about 25%, 24% of the project cost. Some other questions that we had about the project included, I didn't have anything done in front of my property and still got an assessment. So if you could go back to the map again, and this is the same for both projects, so I want to make sure that you understand that it's consistently applied. Now I need to, okay, I can just do it from here, I think. Okay, So I'll give you, for instance, on Lucille Street. Lucille Street was reconstructed, and the adjacent properties up on 4th Street got a proposed assessment. And the reason for that is on all of our corner lots, we have what's called frontage, we have what's called side yard. In this case, and we go by the plat, no, not by where the front door is to the property, because we're not going to go out and check to see which way your door is facing for assessment purposes. But I'll use this as a good example. This corner lot was improved on Lucille Street, and let's say that they have 200 feet of side yard on Lucille Street. And this frontage was not improved on 4th Street. If in fact we allowed full assessments on both sides of a corner lot, there'd be a lot of vacant corner lots in town. And so what we do is we assess this side yard back to the center of the adjacent block. And we do that in all cases. We do that in the corner of Maple. If this is the side yard, it goes back to the center of the block, with the corner property paying twice what any interior property owner pays. So I'm just going to use some for instances. For instance, if there were 6 lots here, we would divide that assessment by sevenths, and the corner lot would get 2/7 for that side yard, and every other interior lot to the center of the block would get 1/7. It's not an entire amount for each property owner, but the corner lot does not get it all, both front and side. So we had that case in this location. We have it across the street. We've got it at these locations. And in these, I'll give you, okay, these got improvements on both front and side. Okay, so they have a cost per foot of their front, a cost per foot of the side that was multiplied by that factor, and then we apply the $5,500 maximum assessment. Okay, we also had some property owners that had a recent, fairly recent assessment for another street project. So we do utilize their previous assessment minus some depreciation if it was 5-6 years ago, and add that to the current proposed assessment and apply the $5,500 max. Okay, so if it was just done last year, the $5,500 max is essentially what it is. So I know you might have some specific questions of specific lots, but this method of assessment is given out at every public informational meeting and is sent out to the property owners for explanation. So I want to make sure that everyone knows up front what the procedure is. I know there are some special conditions. We might get into a couple special conditions. For instance, in cul-de-sacs, we divide that equally rather than by frontage or by individual properties. It's just each one pays the same amount. We have some comments that I never use that side street, and that might be true, but for assessment purposes, it's kind of a community cost involvement where you can see that the community helped pay for 75% of the project costs. And the only individual project costs you have are the individual driveways, individual sanitary sewer services, however long that might be. Now, if the sanitary sewer was on one side of the street or the other, typically they're in the middle, so that the lengths are approximately the same. But in some locations, the sanitary sewer might be offset. That's no one's fault. It's just you have to own that piece of sanitary sewer from the main in. MMU has resolved that in their condition where they pay it all up to the curb stop. we have been discussing that, but we didn't want to have ownership of a bad sanitary sewer service line. We have some that is Orangeburg. We have some small sections of clay tile. We have mislaid service lines. So that's why we didn't do the same thing. It's not a force main type issue. I think I'm going to stop there. That's kind of the discussion of how we do our assessments. Some people have come in and asked specifically about their property. We'll go from there.
Okay, thank you. Does council have any questions of Glenn before we open up to public comment?
Well, just two quick things here. One of the areas of concern is the corner lots. So can you give us an idea, do you know how long that policy has been in effect where we apportion it that way?
Many years.
Many years.
Well, and I'll tell you that the policy of the 5,500 and our method of assessment was fully reviewed by a court case in 2006. It was our 6th Street project, if you remember that one. We took that one, we held in abeyance until we went through a court determination. And they indicated that in general, for those general improvements, that was the maximum assessment, and you did get improvements by side yards and front yards and the general improvements. So as long as our method of assessment didn't end up with a street assessment greater than this, it was okay in court.
You have a second question?
The second question, I just noticed there may be an inconsistency between the map and the resolution. In the resolution, it says the South 2nd Street goes from Grimes Street down, and isn't it Country Club Drive where it starts?
It is.
So we could change that in the resolution?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Steve?
Yeah, my question, Glenn, when you look at the proposed breakdown, it shows 16% for engineering and administrative costs.
Mm-hmm.
Where does that number come from?
It comes from historical basis based upon cost of doing this type of work. I'll give you an example. We have kept our rate at 16% for several years, where sometimes we do these projects ourselves in-house. Sometimes we hire it done by a consultant, and the consultant is generally about 22% for doing that same amount of work. But we generally then can offset that 22% by it's not a cost savings. I'll just say we've kept ours at 16%, but if we have it done by a consultant, we don't charge the consultant's rates. We don't charge the 22%. We keep the assessment rate at 16%. And for instance, we've done that in several projects. For instance, Commerce Park will be designed by consultants, and the cost is higher. But when we assess that project, we will use the 16%. So 16% is the rate that we've used for 10, 15 years. We haven't increased it.
And that cost covers?
All design, meetings, inspection, testing, legal, administration. That 16% covers all those costs.
Okay. Any other questions the council has for Glenn? If not, we'll open up for public comment for, again, any property owner on this project, and then we'll have another public hearing on the Redwood area project next. So,
and while they're coming up, this is the assessment worksheet that we use, that we do separate out, if people don't know that, we do separate out the street cost separate from the MMU wastewater cost. It's a very large spreadsheet, and each property that is identified has each individual type of improvement shown, if you have any questions.
okay, so anyone wish to speak as part of the public hearing? Steve? While Steve's coming up, I'd go over again. What we'd like you to do is to put your name, your property address, and then on that, and So that's for the public record. But if your intent is to preserve your right to appeal the assessment, then we need that in writing and signed on that separate paper. So
my
go
name's
ahead.
Steve Otto, and I have a property under construction on the corner of Maple and South First Street. Now, 2 years ago, city workers were working on Williams and Maple, and I had a tree issue with my sidewalks. I'm on the north side of the Maple Street. So I went down and asked them, I had to take a tree out that was dead, and to get to the roots, I had to take part of the sidewalk out. I said, should I replace the sidewalk? And they say, yes, they aren't going to touch the curb or the sidewalk. So I poured 24 feet of sidewalk and curb, and the next spring they tore it out. I'm just wondering if I could get a deduction of $400 or $500 on my assessment. I got no problem with my assessment, but it's.
We'll certainly review that, yep.
I just threw money out the window. Sure.
Yep, and I think I even remember that discussion. So.
Yep.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. I don't think Steve, you're not appealing your assessment. No. You want credit for that sidewalk, so that should be taken care of. Yes.
Hi, I'm Kim Allen, and I live on Maple Street 6 months out of the year. What I want to know is that we did a petition not to have a sidewalk. We do have a sidewalk now. We do have to pay for half of it when part of the city does not have sidewalks. Majority of them don't. We notice people walking in the street. When we came home today, in fact, 4 people are walking in the street not using those sidewalks. So why did we have to have those sidewalks? Okay, now we have the sidewalks. Who's responsible for keeping those sidewalks clean in the winter? We didn't want them. Do we have to pay for getting those clean? We spent 6 months in Texas. I don't feel as if I should have to pay for those sidewalks to be cleaned when we didn't want them. The whole street, not just us, but the whole street did not want those sidewalks. So why do some streets have sidewalks and some don't?
I can respond to that.
Go ahead.
When we had the public hearing on the street improvements, we had a discussion specifically on our design was sidewalks on both sides. And if you remember, the direction is to eliminate them on one side. And I don't know exactly where she lives, but
Maple.
Apparently it's on her side. And so, yes, and she's right. They're responsible for keeping them clean in the wintertime. I know that's an irritation to some people. Number one, to have sidewalks. Number two, to maintain them. But it is a direction by the city council that we address more than just drivers. We address bicyclists, we address walkers, and she's right. A lot of people you see jogging or walking in the street, even when there's sidewalks there. We can't control that, but at least they have the availability of that. Whether it's the kids on their tricycles or adults walking through the neighborhood, it's not necessarily just for the owner of the house that lives there. It's for the community. And the council has decided that in our policy, it's sidewalks on both sides. And then we come and we have direction to either keep it that way or reduce it to one side. And we've done that in several locations.
Then why are some of the streets don't have any sidewalks on either side of the street? We're talking new districts where the road is just put in. We're talking about just old sections that have no sidewalk at all. I can name a number of streets that don't have sidewalks. And like I said, I don't feel as if we should maintain those sidewalks. Now, we are from Eveleth, Minnesota. The city does their main streets, then they have a little, whatever it's called, and they take care of their own sidewalks. Mm-hmm. But first they take care of their main streets, of course, for emergency purposes and everything else, but they maintain the sidewalks. So that's something to think about.
We do have locations where even in new subdivisions where sidewalks aren't fully installed, but we have development agreements with all of them for when the development does occur, that they get filled in. In the older subdivisions, there was no sidewalk regulations for installing new. If you remember everything from Dunedin south probably didn't have a sidewalk.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Susan Gropel, and I live at 412 South First Street. I'll just point out my property on the map. I'm right here. And I'm being assessed almost $1,000 when no work was done in front of my house to my sidewalk, driveway, on the street, or anything. And I'm being assessed, and I do not agree with this at all. I am not even near the construction.
Okay. Glenn?
That would be the side yard assessment that we're talking about. If she had nothing done on South First Street, it would be the corner lot.
I am not a corner lot. I'm
No,
next to
no.
him.
It's a corner lot assessment. It's for the improvements on Maple Street that would come up the side on the west side of South Fourth Street.
They did nothing on to my property at all, in front or on the side or back.
Okay, Maple Street was,
I'm not on Maple Street. I'm on South First.
right, and are you within 4 lots of?
I'm right next to Steve Otto. I'm the house up one from him.
So you would be on the west side of South First Street?
Correct.
And adjacent to his. Which he's on the corner lot, and that side yard assessment went up South First Street a certain number of lots. Okay?
Why? Because that did not benefit me at all.
Well, it's what I just talked about for area improvements. We didn't want to give 100% of both his front and his side to Steve's property.
So I'm going to be paying for part of his assessment.
Yes, you will.
Thank you, Sue.
Yeah, yeah,
Want
yeah.
that?
Well, and you might never use that street either, but that's what we're talking about is that corner lot shouldn't get an assessment from both sides.
Not in a corner lot.
No, you aren't. He is.
But I'll be.
And you get part of his. Okay.
Not.
That's what we're trying to explain.
Do you want to sign an appeal? Okay, all right.
Then that needs to be handed in. Oh, not,
Up here.
if you want to appeal, you need to say, I hereby appeal.
On this one.
Is that on?
Yes. Do I need to write the reason I just get my parcel number? No. She needs to do it. She only signed this.
Yeah, that's.
She didn't do the other.
Did you get the yellow one?
So we'll, just to clarify.
We need to make sure you get the right one done.
Right. So to clarify, if you wish to preserve your rights to appeal your assessment, it needs to be on an individual sheet. List your name, your property address, and your signature on there. So, Dennis, you can probably work the room here with that. So,
We don't get charged extra.
okay, go ahead.
Hi. Good evening. With this current assessment, I guess I don't like somebody sending me a bill for $5,400 without a breakdown. I want to know where all those costs are going, what I'm getting charged for. Now, basically, the sidewalk has been a big issue with this whole community. And I was told by Glenn, we are supposed to be paying 1/4 of that sidewalk. Is that a true statement?
50%.
Why would I pay 50% when the other side of the street doesn't have a sidewalk?
And they pay 50% too. So the sidewalk costs for the district are added into the street replacement cost and taken times 50% and spread at that rate for everyone. So everyone participates in the sidewalk on your side. What they don't participate, and we talked about this before, is shoveling it. Okay, they're getting a sidewalk assessment on the other side of the street, whether or not they got a sidewalk. It's in the street costs, 50%. But they aren't paying for the maintenance.
And what is your address?
I still would like to see an itemized bill.
And I have that.
You do?
Before you leave tonight,
Okay.
if you want to look at, or we'll send it to you. So
Okay.
I have it here.
All righty. Thank you very much.
What was your address? I'm sorry.
117 West Maple.
West.
West Maple.
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, other input as part of the public hearing?
Yeah, just being on a corner lot, it really seems like a bad deal. And we paid like $3,000 last year for the Grimes Street improvement, and then here's another bill, $6,549, and that's more than what the guy said was the mandatory or maximum or whatever.
And your address is?
403 South 2nd, on the corner of Grimes and South 2nd, and just last year we already paid him.
Okay, let me reiterate that the $5,500 maximum is for the street assessment only, and any driveways or sanitary sewer connections are 100% the property owners, or any walk-ups. But I don't think they have a walk-up. Do you? From the sidewalk to the house that was replaced? No. So
There's an $850 driveway.
They didn't put in any driveway.
Okay, and
In fact, when they were fixing on Grimes Street, they were pounding to still put stuff in. My driveway on South 2nd Street fell down, so I've got a lip like that. When I try to get out in the winter now, I'm going to get stuck in the snow trying to get out over that where they wrecked my driveway. I had a
We
cement
just paid a few
driveway.
years before to put that in.
Yeah.
okay.
It seems like they tore up the street about 6 times.
Yeah.
They
come
put
back
in, they
multiple times.
took a corner of the
Front,
street
yeah.
out and then put in a sidewalk that went nowhere. And this
And then-
great
then they dug it up
big
again.
drain that would kill a child or a dog or a cat could fall in there on the corner. I never ever had water in my basement. I never had a sump pump. And now you've taken the hill away, so that's gonna lay flat there. And I'm probably gonna get water in there when it rains now
Okay.
from Grimes.
I do have the assessment and the maximum applied. So if you want to look at that after the meeting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Other property owners that wish to speak as part of the public hearing?
Are we on the Redwood Street?
No,
project?
No, this is still South 2nd. And before we close the public hearing, Bob, are you wishing to talk? Before we close the public hearing, I just want to be sure that everybody who wishes to sign an appeal to preserve your rights does so before we close the public hearing. So, okay. If not, I turn to the council and entertain a motion to close this public hearing.
Let's wait till he's in.
They're all doing the same sheet of paper.
Okay.
You want to look at it then?
Yeah.
We have to have a separate sheet. I'm more than happy to do a separate one.
Just want to make sure that it's correct before.
Is it
they-
correct?
Make
Okay,
sure
we
it's
want a
all
separate one?
signatures, addresses. Auto. Gene?
Yes.
Do you
Gene?
want a separate one?
No.
You said-
No.
Okay. Yeah, it shows 6.
The Grimes Street,
You
yeah.
paid the Grimes Street
Paid that,
assessment.
and then the road, so it's like, and they said that they were going to do the other road, and I'm like, why would you do them both at the same? They put the sidewalk in.
Well,
and
you
they dug it
know,
up.
they would have it down and then they would tear it up and come back and
They
do it
did.
again, and then they'd tear it up again and lay it down. They should figured it out so they could have saved a little money, not have to tear up the street so many times.
Okay.
Okay. Just waiting a few minutes until
Let's make sure we sign.
the last property owner signs.
We did receive also a written objection from another property owner on the project.
In this package.
It's not, yeah, it's on this one, but it went to Jane with a copy.
And that
number.
came in?
Yes, it came in. I've got it on my phone.
Okay, good, good.
She couldn't be here
That's the one
tonight.
that also called you.
Yep. She
I
couldn't.
just want to bring up one more thing. You said that on the paper that it stopped at Grimes, or you were measuring it from Grimes, like the car wash and the Schwann's lot and that church up there that they changed. They're getting billed too, right?
Yeah, it actually went all the way up. That Grimes, that's going to be corrected. Yes.
Okay. So that yellow pad of paper is that,
Oh, that's just notes.
Yeah, it needs to be handed in to the mayor before we close this hearing.
It was just his own thoughts.
no, that's fine.
You know, there's a request sheet in the back that they're signing. We have to wait for that.
When you sign that paper, that means you can tell him later it's okay.
That's correct.
Yes. All good.
Yeah, I'll take it.
Right
Yep.
there.
Thank you. So we have everybody on self-second that wants to sign. With that, then, I would entertain a motion to close the public hearing.
So move.
Motion by Craig, second by David. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote.
David, did you let yours go to sleep?
The motion passes. We'll now consider the resolution that would adopt the assessment that was the subject of the public hearing.
I have a comment.
Yes.
If our recommendation could be changed to include with any modifications deemed necessary, because I do want to review a couple of them.
Right. Okay. So I would, with that addition, I would entertain that motion.
I would make a motion with that friendly wording.
Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 6. And this is the public hearing on East Lion Street, Jean Avenue, East Redwood, B Street project. And once again, I'll call on Glenn Olson to conduct this public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This one I'd like to handle similar to what we did before without all the comments on the special assessments. But this is our district. It's a little bit different in how the lots are configured and how the proposed assessments were given out. But we did them the same as we did all of our other projects that we have. And in saying that, I'd like to go to a couple of specific requests that we've had that I'll, if I can pick on you, Tom. Okay. So, Tom is at the intersection. Trying to find this here. Of
Up to the right there.
right here. Okay. No. No.
The yellow lines, Glenn.
No.
Go all the way up to where the Holy Redeemer is, to the right there. There you go.
Okay. I have to get this straight here. Okay. I'm still not seeing your property.
He's not on the map.
That's because we're not on the map.
Not on the,
The
Not
corner.
on the map.
Okay. Do you have this one in one of the? Thank
And
you.
the Gene
I
go
thought.
left.
Let's see. Is there another map that shows this project area? I'm sorry. Yes. That's right. Okay. Now I need to see the whole thing. Make it a little smaller. A little smaller. Okay. So we made improvements to Jean Street. And we want to talk about side yards here. And the improvement was done to Jean, and we took that assessment back to what we call the center of the block. And you can see the center of the block, if you really take the center of the block, it would split Mr. Schulte's property in half with the assessment. However, we want to treat these properties similar, the same as we do these properties on Jean Street. So you can see that this property includes a part of a vacated alley, or it could have been platted this way. So the depth of this property is deeper than this property. No, you don't have to see actual numbers here. It's just process. So when we spread this assessment, we went back these 4 lots. We gave this person 2/5, 1/5, 1/5, 1/5. When this gets improved, it will be a lesser distance and come back a lesser number of lots. Okay, so if we want to split hairs, we could have used an eighth, an eighth, an eighth, and 2/8 or 3/8. It would be 3/8 on the corner. But this is the way we proposed the assessment for Jean Street side yard going back to the center. And the property owner came in and, indicated the same thing. There was no real improvements done directly in front of my home. And that's true. Whenever South Whitney is done, we'll be looking at his property for the full frontage amount. And these properties would get a side yard assessment for a piece of Church Street. There are different ways to calculate special assessment. This is the way we do it citywide, and that's how we did. These 3 properties did not get any physical improvements to the front of their home, but pays for part of the side yard assessment. Is that the only one I think we have a picture of? I wanted to address that one because that's kind of the essence of side yard assessments and how we handle it. Oh, go to the cost breakdown sheet, would you? This is real similar, except for MMU didn't have as great participation in this because they had less water main replacement. So on $1.6 million, it was about 27% instead of 24.1% assessed. But the ad valorem share for the 50%, this went up as well because there wasn't MMU to share with for the street costs. Okay, so we still take the same maximum, the $5,500, and if anyone, and there were some properties in this project area that had been assessed previously, and we have the credits that we gave them for that street assessment, so we included that. If anyone has a question about the amount that they got credited for a previous assessment, we have that information on that spreadsheet as well. So I think I'll leave it at that. That's our
I have a quick
assessment.
question for
Yes.
you, though, Glenn. Can you go back to this map, Sheila? It's just something I... On Whitney Street there, and there's just something that, on the other side of the street, there is no corner lot.
No. And so this assessment would come all the way to here. And this would be all frontage. But this assessment would come all the way to this lot.
So Glenn, as a point of clarification, the width of Jean Street that runs on that, which would be the east line of Whitney, that's the piece that's been assessed to Holy Redeemer, correct?
The piece that's
just that little width of the street, but on the east end.
Yeah, the amount of this street that was improved would go to them. And whether you think it's fair or not, we handle churches like residential properties where they still get a maximum of $5,500, even though they might have a fairly significant property. The remainder is kind of the city's cost, generally.
Back to my point though, wouldn't it be, even though Jean Street doesn't go through, wouldn't it be more fair to pull those 3 to Jean Street and pull the other 3 to Church Street? Since Jean Street does not carry through, but still treat it as it does carry through. Because they use, then it splits it equally amongst that block.
The church uses it a lot.
Well, they're not that's not the church, that's residents.
Here.
Well, I'm not worried about, I'm talking
these
properties 1, 3, and 4, or whatever, yes.
These? Yeah, they didn't get an assessment for this.
But wouldn't it be more fair to pull those 3 down to, split the blocking in the middle and pull those 3 to Jean Street? And slide that through and act as a corner lot on that one?
Well, if this is how we take it. If Jean Street was extended, they would get that side yard assessment. Right.
Well,
And this one, this is another interesting one where these were all assessed. This is the side yard of this triangular shaped lot. So this property got 100% of this frontage on Jean, and then this side yard was broken out and spread all the way back to the middle. They did get like a $11,000 street assessment that was reduced to $5,500. You can see why. It's real. It's a lot of frontage, and so these people have various amounts. I think this was like 78, 60, 60, 67 or something like that. So they got 100% of their frontage on Jean Street for improvements, and then a portion of this side yard, which is calculated as 1/6, 2/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6, 1/6.
I have a question. I'm trying to recall, have we had this much discussion about this in the past regarding side lots? Are we dealing with this every time?
Yes.
And I'm wondering, would it be just simpler and what people would consider more fair if we just said you're going to be assessed on frontage but not your side lot, and apply that across the board to everyone? And then the general fund just picks up any side lot cost.
Well, it would reduce the amount of assessable frontage that would increase the individual cost per foot. So you're not going to be saving.
But I think then people might consider it more of a fair type of thing.
All into fairness.
And I think that there's a perception out there that this is not fair. And I'm just wondering if there's a simpler solution for not only the taxpayers, but for you. I mean, this is a lot of work for you in the engineering department to figure out these things.
Right.
And should we develop a simpler formula so that we don't have these discussions in the future?
John,
so there is a simpler method, and I believe you brought it up at our workshop. That's to adopt the MMU process.
Yeah.
Which there are no assessments. We pay for it all, but it does get spread out through all the taxes.
You have $50 a month that you pay, and you never have an assessment.
And I guess the concern I might have with that is that what do you do about all the people that have paid assessments in the past?
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you have to give you credit. 10 years worth of credits.
Okay.
It's something that we certainly can.
I think that's something we need to take as a discussion.
No. It's been proven in other communities. It's not a street utility.
So at this point,
important.
let's move into if individuals have public comments and also wish to preserve their right to appeal.
Do you mind if I go with them?
We're all gonna go.
We're 406, 406.
You have a written objection.
Which we've been.
Just follow it.
We'll sign
Okay,
that.
so you have that. Would you mind putting this on that?
Sign that one, do you want to speak
Well,
first?
that's good.
Mind just putting that on the table there, so, thanks.
Thanks.
They did.
We just filed a written objection on behalf of myself, Greg Solomon, Thomas Schultes, and Michael Swan. Michael Swan lives here. I live here. Thomas Schultes lives here.
You're covered on here.
What Mr. Bayer Kohler just suggested is a fairer way to do it, and that is you split it among the people that are on the street that is being worked on. I believe that when a person purchases a corner lot that is on two streets, they should reasonably expect that their assessments will be larger. There will not be vacant corner lots. It's not fair to assess costs against landowners that do not live on the streets where the reconstruction occurred. I believe that relatively soon there's going to be improvements on South Whitney Street that are done, and then Thomas and Michael and I are certainly going to get assessed for those. So the three of us request that the proposed assessment be rescinded, and that's all I have.
Thank you. And we do have your document here, so everything's covered.
No, you're covered.
No, you're fine.
With that one?
Hi, my name is Tom Schultes, and I'm at 406 South Whitney. We've been kind of me as the topic of conversation because I'm in the middle of the block, I believe, but I don't know that that has a major effect. What I'm saying, and I did talk to my city councilman, and I was informed that you do this, and it's a basis of kind of putting the assessment out to all those that are, I'm going to say, probably getting a benefit or whatever. I don't see any benefit for 406 South with me, but how do you want to say it? I was also told that there can't be an assessment if it doesn't increase the value of your property. I don't see where this increased or made any effect on the value of my property. So that's part of my objection. But just in case, which I'm thinking we won't get anywhere, is on the assessment for the particular property, which is 313 Jean Street, if you'll look on that map, or we're in a different spot, no, we're still there. You'll notice that and he said that it's 148 feet of frontage. If you look at the other lots, they're all between 60 and I think 78. No, there might be an 80-footer in there. And if you're talking about fair and equal assessments, I don't know if by having a frontage foot of 148 feet makes it a good division, because that's what he's got on the side, that 148 feet is what our part of the assessment is going to be. It doesn't seem reasonable to me that if I'm paying for somebody else around the corner, that I would pay for a bigger person who's got a bigger portion of property. It just isn't making sense to me. So with that, I will say thank you for listening.
Thank you,
and
Tom.
have a good day.
Thank you.
Mike?
I'm Mike Swan. To what Tom and Greg both said, exactly what they said. I don't feel there's been any, we didn't gain anything for property. And what Glenn said too, assess the street that's being done, and why punish the other people on the side streets. I just think it's totally wrong and just out of character to do that.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you.
Mike Slegel, 208 East Redwood. I'm actually talking about my mother's spot too, 303 East Redwood. I'll start with mine, 208 East Redwood. It's a corner lot. I guess the main question I have is some of the assessments. Number one, you said that the water utilities is paid for by the utilities. Mm-hmm. Okay, if they pay from the street to this shutoff, mm-hmm. and this just happens to fall underneath my driveway, so do they pay for my driveway portion of where they dug?
I would have to check that one.
Okay, I was on the understanding that was it. The other thing is they're digging in the same trench for my sewer. So why am I paying, who's paying for this? Am I getting billed and MMU? Mm-hmm. I mean, when they dug the hole, they were both in the same hole.
Yep. Water and sewer were together?
Right next to each other.
Next to each other.
Within 3 feet.
That was the process years ago.
And they were kept that way?
Yeah, they were just connected to what existed.
So I guess I'm paying for all this, but they're digging in my driveway and stuff. I feel that part of that assessment should have went to MMU because that's their rule. I didn't make the rule.
Is yours 208?
I'm 208.
Yep.
The other question I have is we got billed, and I understand all this, but we got billed for 6-inch thick sidewalks that go across your driveway. Nothing was ever brought up about that at any meeting. Sidewalks are typically 4-inch. Because it come across my driveway, we had to pay for the additional 2 inches of concrete, which was about $690 for a yard of concrete. I don't agree with that. Everything's got to be formed up the same way. It doesn't take them any longer to pour 6 inches than it does 4 inches. They're forming it up. They're going against an existing driveway. I kind of see issues there. If we are getting assessed for that, then everybody, the public should know about this. It's just another expense that we're getting. I guess the other concern I have is, there's engineers out looking at these jobs. I think they need to come by and look at our streets and look at this concrete work that was done. It was done fast. You look down our sidewalk, nothing straight. If there was a sidewalk that come out or somebody's sidewalk come from their house, they went around it. We all have lot pins. They were located. I understand there's issues there, but when you're a foot away from a lot pin on one side of the property and you go 60 feet away and you're 3 inches away, the sidewalk's curved. We're spending, my assessment was over $11,000. I expect a good job. If I hired that done or I did that as a contractor, I wouldn't get paid. But we don't have a choice. So that kind of irritates me there. I guess that's my main deals. I'd like to address that. The other thing, I understand we make mistakes, but I asked for an itemized deal for both my mother's house, which is 303, and my house at 208. 303, looking through it, my mother would have paid this bill. It was an $8,000 plus bill. They took out 24 square yards, I believe it was, of concrete, and they made a mistake and put somebody else's driveway in hers and had 48 yards of concrete, or square yards. Her driveway got 2 feet shorter because they moved the curb over. So red light, if I didn't have that, that was $1,100 she would have paid. I understand, like I said, people make mistakes, but...
Is that corrected on this?
It has been corrected.
Okay.
I just want to make sure that we understand that that's another reason why itemized bills should go out to customers. Because my mother would have never known that. And $1,100 is a lot of money. So, just my big thing, I guess. The only other thing I could say is, I think there needs to be a lot more communication between what's going to happen on projects like this. Because, I got relatives in Wilmer, and they knew exactly how much their bill was going to be before the project started. I get a bill $11,400 or $240 some dollars, and I got a month and a half to decide, am I going to put it on my taxes or pay for it? He had a year and a half. That gives him time to refinance, to get a loan, to put it on your taxes, but it gives you choices. that's a lot of money for me to come up with in a month and a half. So.
Mike, have you signed an appeal or?
No, I'm not appealing. I just.
Okay.
Yep. Do I need to appeal for that driveway issue?
No.
Okay. I mean, if they.
I would sign it, Mike.
Yeah, I
Cover
think
yourself,
you should. I
sign
think
it.
you should, just to make sure. Yeah. I mean, no offense, Glenn.
I don't take offense.
I didn't think so.
I'm Danielle Walshman at 305 Jean Avenue, and I just wanted to follow up and say how disappointed I am in the city in this process. First of all, I came out of this process, or out of the construction, with damage to my personal property. And last year I talked to the city about it and went round and round and round and told them that their option wouldn't work. Didn't listen to me. Guess what? I still have damage to my personal property. The city's hard to get a hold of, don't return my phone calls in a timely manner, and still, I'm the one who's stuck with damage to my driveway that I'm stuck with. And what I was told about that wasn't true either. The 6-inch driveway was not 6 inches. I have a tape measure and I can measure that. One of the other issues with construction, during the construction project, there's no reason in the world why I should not have access to my driveway for 3 months' time. I understand that there's two weeks where concrete needs to cure. For that other 3 months, the contractor should have ramped up my driveway so that I can have access to my garage, so that I can take care of my property. That did not happen. Also, certain things in the city's construction specs were not followed. And I bought my property into this process, so I don't know if there were public hearings beforehand to let property owners know things. Like your own construction specs stated that the contractor was responsible for working out agreement with garbage haulers, and they were responsible to take them to a place where the garbage haulers could get that. That did not happen. We all hauled our own garbage cans down the street in a sidewalk that wasn't there, and I even watched the contractor take someone's garbage can and move it across the street. Why, I have no idea. Also, I want to say that I know this. I work a lot. I wasn't there when it was constructed, but I can tell you that stormwater pollution laws were broken out there. And I really expect the city to do a better job than to break laws. And I guess my question that I will ask is, the interest rate has that 2% administrative fees, and what are those 2% interest fees going towards?
You can address that last one.
I can address most of those. First of all, our sincere apologies for any of those. I mean, if this really happened, and I don't doubt you, it's the first time I've heard it. Now, I did hear some of those comments from other people, but these things are not acceptable. The garbage haulers thing, it's in our specifications. No property owner should have had to take them to a site. That was a contractor's responsibility. No access for 3 months, that should never occur. So I'm with you on this. So I will check on these items, and I will give you a call concerning this, because the items that she brought up aren't acceptable.
Glenn, on the damages that she mentioned to her
Yes,
property,
I don't know about them, so if she brings them up,
should she sign a sheet just so that she's on the sheet?
it has
Okay,
nothing
all
to
right,
do with
good.
the assessment.
No.
But if there's private damage on her property from the contractor's responsible for that, period. Anything off the right-of-way, especially, and I assume it's off the right-of-way, is their responsibility, period. So I'm a little bit upset with us about that as well. So.
And on that note, Glenn, I know talking about access to your driveway,
Yeah.
That's something we as a city need to work on. Because I know when we did East Main Street, you and I are in communication at that rental house that did not have access for an extended period of time.
But as soon as we know about it, we tried to get it there immediately.
I know, but that's something we as a city should keep an eye on and make sure, it's not necessarily the citizen's responsibility to tell us if we're overseeing the project. It's us to keep an eye on the contractor.
That's what that administrative fee.
Correct.
That's right.
Inspections,
Yeah,
yes.
no.
Keeping people.
Sure. If you ever have trouble like that, give us a call directly.
Danielle, thanks for bringing that forward.
Yep.
Go ahead.
Hello, I'm Ken Van Coolen. My wife Denise and I live on 200B Street, so just down the road from Mike Slagle there. I'd like to reiterate and agree with a lot of things that he's brought up. One point that I would like to make is we had our entire driveway removed in the middle of this project since they were already at it and pretty much needed it, and then had it replaced. And it seemed to me that I noticed once we got those bills taken care of and then we got the assessment, it seemed like the removal for what the city took out and the reinstallment it seemed to be a little excessively more. We tried to convert it into, well, they got square yards and I went square feet, and it was like 71 cents a square foot to remove for what RNG did on my main driveway. Seemed to be considerably more than that when I figured it out for what the city took out, and the same as what putting the driveway in, and then what the city replaced. And I just want to make that point. I do have an issue with the sidewalk. More of a safety concern. Our sidewalk runs to our corner, and then if you want to go across the street and continue to Main Street, you got to go kitty corner across the intersection. Which, okay, like they said, a lot of people walk down the street, but we do have a lot of small kids in our neighborhood. It just didn't seem to make a lot of sense, especially in the mornings when we have school that's going on and people are running back and forth to Holy Redeemer, and people come down Lion Street and try to avoid the C Street light. It's very busy. We have had accidents there. There are no signs on that intersection either, but just a couple, it's a little bit of a side note, but I just wanted to bring that up. I was a little bit disappointed when I got our assessment, and it seemed like maybe a little bit out of whack as far as what you'd be able to get it done for yourself, but that's the only point I wanted to make. Thank you.
Thank you.
Len, do you have any response to the difference in costs there? Or?
No, it's what our bid costs are.
And another question is, was there a change in contractor? Is this a normal contractor that we've used before, and have these problems occurred before?
ENG.
What?
It's our local contractor.
Right, so it's not a change in contractor that this is happening?
No.
Okay, Doctor?
Don't know me. Leroy Appleter. I'm right across the street from Donnell. My only question is this thing about the side yard assessments. My lot is only 70 foot, but now we get, Steve's got that side yard and front yard. He gets a big assessment, but then we also pay for his side yard, and the poor guys up in Whitney gets paid for the side yard on Jean. I don't think that doesn't ring too good for me. I think the side yards should be for the property that's there. The rest of it shouldn't be penalized because there's a side yard on it. As far as Donnell talking about the garbage, yeah, we all took it up to the Whitney Street and threw all the junk. None of us could get on our driveway all summer long. I'd go to the lake on Friday mornings, and once in a while Jeff would help me carry stuff up to the car and my little dog. But it was a mess. I think the city tried to do a good job in keeping us in contact with what was going on. I could talk to him about every morning. The breakdown that came, and these guys didn't mention it, but it came to more in the landscaping part. When we got to that, the stuff that was hauled in was so caked and stuff that I think 2 or 3 of the landowners brought or hired or rented their own digger thing to kind of break it up. We didn't know the time frame as to when it was going to be finished, and so they thought, well, maybe they should seed in their own property. I think there should have been a better communication as to the stages of the project as they went along, because I know these guys didn't say it, but I know they felt it. We'd have corner neighborhood get-togethers, and I'm sure the city heard about it. At least that's what my understanding, that they just really weren't too pleased with that aspect of it. finally got finished, but we weren't really too happy with the project as it went along there. So I'm not going to sign anything unless I want my name on there, but you guys know me, so.
Okay. Thank you. Anyone else wish to speak? Doug?
I'll try to be brief. I'm Doug Krogan. I'm at 301 East Redwood. And just to go on a couple things, I do have a couple of questions about my piece of property and how I would turn it in. There was a lot of rushing to get the project done. And in the concrete work, shortly thereafter, it's already cracked and broken. And I have the pictures. I just want to know where to turn it in because it should be fixed or it's going to cause.
Here.
I agree with Mike. I mean,
you can turn it into us.
I'll turn it in, and when they replaced the fire hydrant, they replaced it with gravel. I can't even get grass to grow there. And I think going forward, when we have these projects, we're sitting here with all of our stuff, and I don't know if the mayor remembers it. He drove through our neighborhood, and it was a disaster. It had rained all of September. We had a lot of rain. We have some farmers in here. And we talked to the landscapers the night before, and I came home and I said, you can't do this. It's wet soil chunks. There was no sifted dirt in any imagination that went in there. And so it got jammed in there. So now what's happening is because you put chunks of dirt in there that could not be formed into the concrete in the areas, it's pulling apart from the curb and from the driveways. So the assessments are here, got that. But if going forward, they need to come back and do some fixing up of the concrete that's torn, the fire hydrants, so we're back digging it up again. And as Leroy stated, there was 3 or 4 neighbors that said the heck with it, knowing the timing and everything was not good of when that seed went in. The landscaper told me, I know we shouldn't be doing this. I know we shouldn't. It's wrong. And it's raining the next morning, and there they are, putting dirt down, trying to work up bad dirt. I think we ask us, going forward, those things can't be done, just to avoid the fine. So if I have to sign something to make the work needs to get finished.
So
okay. That's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Doug.
This one?
Yeah, sure. Anyone else wish to speak? Mike?
I just got a couple more comments, I guess, too. Going back to what he said, right now along the curb, if you go look at it, and his is probably the same way, but our grass and dirt is down at least 1.5 inches from the curb. It's settled. It's pulling away. They have addressed the one issue in the middle of my driveway. There's a crack that goes right across my sidewalk towards my water shutoff. The water shutoff was actually a foot into my driveway. They didn't replace that because it was replaced when I built my new house. But they dug straight down. The city has addressed it. There was a gap below it. It wasn't a lot, but it had settled about 1 inch. Well, they mud jacked my driveway up. My driveway's not perfect. I told them that. I was more concerned about if it was a foot gap. But they didn't mud jack the sidewalk. So now I got a little 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch sidewalks dipped, and it's cracked right there. So I just, I don't know what the warranty is on this. I got cracks in both gutters too. I think it was a forced job. It was get it done, just get paid, and let's move on. And I really think the council needs to go and look at some of those streets.
And the council is written down here too.
Okay.
We're going to check into the warranty part of it also.
Well, yeah, what my wife brought up too. When they brought this dirt in, it was supposed to be premium dirt. I tilled my yard 6 times to get it anywhere close. And 2 5-gallon pails of glass, nails, rocks, and metal. That's not,
In the dirt?
Yes.
In
the dirt, in the fill. The other thing
that's what's premium about it.
in the
Not
brand new
extra
soil.
additives.
The other thing I had issues with, and these are professionals doing this job, but they went along with the backhoe and pulled the sod into the hole next to the curb. Anybody that knows anything about sod, it decomposes and settles. I pulled all mine out and I still got 1.5 inches of settling. We got to have better jobs. They're supposed to be professionals.
We need quality.
You're paying for it.
But our apron is already cracked as well. And
we're
So-
getting back to what we paid for. You know.
It's like there was no quality control. Nobody, they knew they could ramp these jobs in, and nobody's going to hold them to it.
Okay.
I think we'll
Anyone
bring the
else?
contract to future assessment hearings.
I think that'd be a good idea. Wouldn't hurt.
Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else wish to speak as part of the public hearing?
Just for a second on the guarantee, when we had the issue with this, with the grass and how bad it was, I think all the neighbors, I pulled the whole pipe out of money and went through it. I think there's a 2-year guarantee with it. Because I was not.
Glenn, do you want to comment on the warranty period?
Yeah, the warranty period we have on different projects is either 1 or 2 years. I think it's 2 years on this, but I can't say it. But it's a full year after final completion, minimum.
Anyone else wish to speak? Anyone else that wishes to sign the appeal that hasn't done so? I want to be sure before we close the public hearing that that's completed.
Thank you, everyone, for bringing this forward. I know that it isn't always easy to come in front of council or in front of a board and voice your dissatisfaction, and I want to say that I appreciate the way that everybody did this, and it's important that we hear that and understand what's going on, and I'm pretty confident that our staff is going to follow up on this and take care of the warranty issues. And thank you, and I'm sorry that project went so bad. I know it was really tough weather last year too, but it makes a problem of a bigger mess, a lot bigger mess. And thank you for being as patient as you are with it.
Any other input? If not, is there a motion to close the public hearing?
So move.
I'll second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. And the next consideration, that would be the resolution adopting the assessment. Questions on the resolution?
Make a motion to adopt the resolution with the same statement that we put on the last one, that with any adjustments that may be needed.
Motion by John. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by David. Discussion?
This is kind of a hard vote to make here because, we want fairness, and we certainly couldn't vote against this when we voted for the previous resolution. And we want to be consistent and fair to all the parties, and want to be fair to people in the past that have been assessed. But I certainly think that we should be looking at this assessment policy and see if it can't be improved.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe if there's some way to return funds to people that have overpaid, or somehow adjust the assessments in the future after the problem gets fixed or improved. And like I said, it's a difficult vote to make, but I'm concerned about fairness to all the parties, but I'm also concerned about correcting the problem and coming up with a better assessment policy in the future.
I also reflect that, but I also want to say, with everybody complaining about the quality of the job, I'm a taxpayer too, and if I had that stuff, I'd be hot. You're getting assessed good money, you expect good work. And this is what bad government sounds like when, a job is ramrodded and the quality is bad, and it means two things. It means the city overpaid. I don't care what the bid was. If it was a low bid, you still overpaid because they did a crap job. Premium dirt is premium dirt, and you shouldn't have to worry about some kid stepping on a nail, 3 years later because it worked its way up. So we need to look at that, look at quality control.
And on that note, Steve, this isn't new because, and I know our street was done 8 years ago. These complaints came up when we did Marshall Street. So this is an issue that needs to be addressed now because we have, our concrete's at yours in our driveway and it's shot. So this is issues that need to be addressed on all these assessments because they're expensive. You look at Schlegel, it's paying $11,000 assessment. That sidewalk needs to be straightened. If it's not, it needs to be straightened. And I think if we enforce that, these contractors realize that they have to come in and do this stuff. I understand the dirt issue. I still twist my ankle in my front yard because the same thing happened 8 years ago. So it does need to be addressed. It needs to be addressed soon.
Any other discussion on the motion?
One more thing, and this would be to Glenn. You know, the city can only fix problems if we're aware of them. And so if people have concern about the work that's being done, are they directed to a certain person to address their complaints to that person so that you're aware of it and steps can be taken? Is there an efficient way to do that? And is there some person in your office other than yourself that would be getting those complaints and make sure that they're followed up and work is completed?
The engineering office would take complaints from anyone, and then we would direct them to the proper location. Now, what we've established over the last few years is we should do an 11-month inspection if the warranty period is 12 months. Okay, the reason that we don't want to do it too early is because other things might come up. Okay, we just want the contractor to come in once at close to the end of the warranty period and repair any deficiencies. So that's what we try to do, is have an inspection, depending upon time of year, of course, but at least a month before the warranty period expires. Now, some things don't show up right away or within a year, but we do our best to do that. But if you have any questions like that, call our office.
And it's important to have good communication so that
Absolutely.
the homeowner knows we're aware of the problem and it's going to be fixed, but at a certain date.
And I will say that on that job, we had, you know, we have two really good inspectors, one of them which is on that job. Jeff is a really good inspector that tries to keep good communications with the property owners if he knows what the problem might be. This issue of the garbage thing, it's the first time I've heard of it. So I don't know if anyone talked to him and said, gee, the specs say this, or what's happening with our garbage. We even had a pre-job conference that indicated that the contractor was responsible to do that. Anyone that attended the pre-job conference would know that. Now, our pre-job conferences aren't real, you know, convenient because it's usually during the daytime. But that's something, that specific item is brought up to the contractor at that pre-job conference. So I'm going to get after that one. Any cracking of concrete, there's many different reasons for cracked concrete. Generally, concrete is either cracked or going to crack. But it shouldn't be because of lack of quality. It should be because of somebody drove their 10-ton truck over the top of that. They had a dumpster delivered, a roll-off to the site, and they backed over it and cracked it. There's a lot of reasons for that, but if it's truly contractor related, the contractor should be responsible to do it. Now, there's a process for that too. We say, contractor, it's your responsibility to do it, to replace it. He's going to try to find every reason not to. But we have to necessarily prove that it was his fault. Either the concrete wasn't good, it was overworked on the surface. I'm just listing examples. But we need to know if a property owner is dissatisfied before the end of the warranty period. One thing we always, landscaping is one of our worst issues. I wish that MMU's got a different policy than we do. They don't have the contractor do the landscaping. They do it themselves. Because then there's the city, or MMU in this case, is responsible for the outcome. The quality of the seed, the quality of the dirt, the quality of the shaping, the quality of the tilling. They have decided to take over that responsibility on their construction projects. And this is exactly why. The contractor, it's the last thing that's done. He wants to get the job done. It rained 2 inches the week before. He's putting in the dirt. He's got a deadline of next week. And that happens. They till it up. They seed it. I'm not disagreeing with these guys. I'm just saying, what's the better alternative? And if we want to do that, it's going to cost us more, but maybe if it costs a little more and you're satisfied with it, you don't mind swallowing twice when the bill comes in.
Or else you hold the contractor responsible, because when we build a house, the guy who does the seeding, that yard is smooth before we let him seed. We hold him responsible to do it, or we make him do it over.
And generally that's a sub, isn't it?
That is correct. It is.
And
I
generally
do not do it
we
myself.
don't have good control over a sub.
Well, with the administration fee, the city should have good control over that whole process too.
We'll work on that one because that is an important item and we probably need to change it. I've had more projects complain about finish work than water mains or sewer mains or storm sewer work or the street finish. It's the landscape, for heaven's sake. So I think that's a good comment for people to make because there's a situation where the city has taken over that responsibility and job because of satisfying the customer. It's customer satisfaction. We should be aware of that.
I also like what Mr. Schlegel said about having a perception well in advance of what the costs may be.
Well,
having a month to come up with the money is kind of...
Yeah. The costs are based upon what you end up doing. No.
Sure, but they're you can get a gross estimate.
Yeah, we can. We can get a gross estimate. It's not, but we have to be careful when we give a gross estimate. When we come to the hearing, they said, I thought you told me this amount. Well, we forgot that we expanded our driveway by another car width. And that's ours. But you told us it was going to be less. Those are the kinds of things that we used to do assessments before we started the project. And then it was, well, in the end, you didn't do this exact thing. So now I want either money back or I don't want to pay extra. So special assessments are a process, and we're acceptable for what the community wants to do.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, I'll move us to a vote on the motion. Motion passes. Move to agenda item number 7. Agenda item number 7 is also a public hearing. This is a public hearing related to the taxi cab ordinance amendment. Dennis, do you have this one?
Yes. Okay, we're not dealing with side yards. We're not dealing with corner lots. We're dealing with a licensed decal. There are just very minor changes that have been recommended in the taxi cab ordinance as it exists. The city is proposing to issue a city-issued decal to go on to the licensed taxi cabs to be displayed prominently. We think that will help with the identification of who is and who is not authorized by the city to conduct taxi business. And Mr. Lozinski, we've removed the word painted from the ordinance. A vehicle, when placed in operation as a licensed taxi, has to be identified. Usually that'll be with a magnetic sign. Now, some are permanently painted, but it just has to have an identification on there. It would be the proposal to approve that. I know we do have a couple of the taxi cab operators here this evening. Be the recommendation to amend the ordinance as proposed.
Thank you, Dennis. Any input as far as this public hearing? Welcome.
I'd like to speak in favor of the ordinance. I think it makes perfect sense. Make our taxis distinguishable from the unlicensed taxis. I'd like to suggest, as a follow-up, to do a public awareness campaign. Make people aware of what the decals are for. And
as an aside, not as part of the ordinance, yes, the Legislative and Ordinance Committee did discuss that, whether that's on our city webpage, publications, look for these licensed taxis, something like that, to work with the owner-operator to make sure more of a public awareness. So yes,
Yeah,
we have discussed.
that's a follow-up item. It's not part of the ordinance itself.
Very good.
So that's all I have.
John?
Just maybe a comment back to the operators. Would not be a bad idea to have a little card or sheet of paper or something. It could be a very simple sheet of paper saying this is what you should be looking for, and just have it in your car when you're you got a passenger, they can take it along.
Educate your customers.
That's right.
Yeah, we were thinking of a flyer that could be put in apartments, that are frequently served by.
A couple of different languages. Yeah.
Yeah, English, Spanish. It's just something along those lines. And this again is a follow-up. It's not something that would be part of the ordinance. And of course, more enforcement. And I think this will aid in enforcement.
And so we did discuss that as when the application for the licensure for 2018, when you apply at City Hall, we would then be distributing to you that decal for your vehicles at that time.
So the decal would not be now, it would be?
No, well, it'll be on an annual basis, and with our retiring city clerk, that'll either be her last assignment or our new city clerk his first assignment to help design that decal. So it'll be coming out with next year's license registration by you operators. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else have input as part of the public hearing? If not, is there a motion to close this public hearing? Motion by Steve, seconded by Jim to close the public hearing. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. You have the ordinance before you that would amend the taxi cab.
Make a motion to approve the ordinance.
Second.
Motion by John, seconded by David. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 8. Agenda item number 8, consider the award proposal for the Spirit of the Community sculpture.
I believe Glenn and Scott may tag team that one, but Scott Vandermillen was going to speak to this one, the Spirit of the Community sculpture.
I can initiate it.
Okay. And then Scott, are you coming up?
Sure.
Oh.
I have the contract. When has the bid?
Okay.
So the contract is for the base work for the artwork that is proposed, and we call for proposals, and we required that anyone wanting to make a proposal must attend a pre-bid conference. One contractor showed up, and he did submit a bid for it. He complied with all specifications, and we're recommending the award to Bladholm Construction of Marshall.
Questions for Glenn?
I think the bid is, what, $69,873?
Yes.
What I'm wondering about is in the agreement that we have regarding the sculpture, one of the provisions says that the owner will provide the foundation for the artwork as well as the site work, electrical wiring, lighting fixtures, and planning materials as per the artist's design, not to exceed $67,000.
Yes.
So it was $67,000 in the agreement, and now this is for $69,000.
Yes. It's a very good question, and that's why Mr. Vandermillen is here to take that question on.
Welcome, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Councilman Bayer-Kohler, in the original agreement that was signed with the artist, he had budgeted a certain amount towards the project, and he feels with what he budgeted with the original agreement and then the amended agreement based on the bid, that he'll have enough dollars to cover that.
So he will make up the $2,873.
That's correct.
Perfect. Any other questions for Glenn or Scott? If not,
has there been any push, because this is art, and I think art is important to developing a beautiful city, but art is like opinions. One person's art might be another person's yuck. What is that? Mm-hmm. So has there been any push for grants for private money to get some of this stuff paid for? Because if you can get people who love art to pay for it or to sponsor it, then it's less money off the general taxpayer.
Sure. I wasn't a part of the original,
Neither was I, so.
the original discussion and agreement, and potentially Dennis can speak to that as well.
And I think Jim Schwartz is here to speak to that too.
But this is being funded through the Avera donation. X number of dollars were set aside for the project. That does include the sculpture work. All this foundation is coming through the donation from Avera for the Avera Plaza. So it is not additional taxpayer dollars. It is donated.
Did that address your question, Steve? Okay, very good. Any other questions?
Jim Schwartz, I can address the public grant aspect. We did apply, the city applied for a legacy planning grant. Often these big projects are legacy assisted, and this one would have been a great one to do that, although you have to have an artist selected before you can initiate the legacy grant. In our case, the planning grant allowed us to advertise and work with Forecast Public Arts in St. Paul to get artists to apply to do the project, and then our committee selected 3 finalists and then the final artist to do it. So it just wasn't possible to get a legacy grant for this one. We did get a planning grant, which was immensely helpful, but we weren't able to do the big one just because of the timing and of the way the artist was selected. So.
Very good. Any other questions about the proposal from to award the concrete foundations? Not, I would entertain.
Make a motion to approve the concrete proposal.
Second.
Well, a motion by John, seconded by David. Now discussion on the motion.
Well, just one on the comment here that the money is coming from the Avera Foundation. Is that where it's coming from, and from the sale of the hospital?
Correct.
And I think that the terms of the agreement with the city was that the money from the foundation, from the sale of the hospital, was supposed to be used for some health-related purpose, and this is considered the health-related purpose.
That's my understanding. That's what a portion of that was designated for, yeah.
There was a portion of that, and the other was the PER replacement fund overfunding, and that was you recall that was a previous action.
Yeah.
And I think that was money, as far as the pension, that was money that the city of Marshall put in, that if it wasn't to be used for pensions, it was to be returned to the city of Marshall. Those were the terms, I think, of the agreement. So in a sense, it was city of Marshall money that is being used here, because, like I said, under the terms of the agreement, if the money wasn't to be used for pension purposes for hospital employees, it was to be returned to the city of Marshall.
And we've had these discussions previously.
Right.
And that's been designated.
Right. And I'm just making that comment so we make sure that as to where the money's actually coming from.
Any other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Move on then to agenda item number 9, which is the consent agenda. We'll bring the items up on the consent agenda.
Thanks, Scott.
Which include the authorization to apply for a grant for the equipment for Marshall Fire Department, the application for exempt permit for Holy Redeemer Church for January 31st, 2018, the renewal of the Minnesota Municipal Utility Association Service Agreement for Safety Management Program Services for 2018, and the bills and the project payments. Is there any item on the consent agenda any member of the council wants to remove for purposes of separate discussion?
I'd move to approve the consent agenda as it stands.
Second.
Motion by Steve, second by Craig. Discussion? If not, all those in favor say aye. Or, excuse me, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. We'll move then to agenda item number 14. Agenda item number 14 is the consideration of the Spirit of Community Sculpture amended services agreement. This has been previously acted on. The change is the completion date. Correct?
That's correct.
Questions about this? If not, I would entertain a motion.
Motion
Motion by Craig, seconded by John. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 15. Agenda item number 15 is the North 7th Street Reconstruction Project, Fairview to County State Aid Highway 33. We have a resolution adopting the assessment, and in this case, there's no assessment hearing because the property owners have agreed to the assessment as the project was constructed.
I have a single question.
Yes.
Did Dunix actually sign?
Should be in your packet.
It is, sir.
Okay, I just want to say.
I had the same question.
Yeah, it was unsigned when I looked.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes, they did.
So Glenn, any?
You know, this is one of those assessment hearings and projects that I appreciate. Even though in our assessment policy, it shows that industrial assessment should be 100% of the improvements. The council reviewed it and agreed that this industrial project was significantly to the benefit of the city as well. So we utilized a significant portion of state aid for the project. Really different than our other industrial zones where generally the industries around the streets benefit really 100% of the project. This one, the adjacent property owners fully agreed, and these aren't assessments to sneeze at. These are significant assessments, and they said, yes, we agree with that's our benefit. So we appreciate the work that the private property owners did on this, stepping forward in this project as well. Recommend approval.
Craig?
Yeah, Glenn, I just want to say that, having been in on a couple of those of the hearings and the meetings leading into this, and then seeing the work that you folks did in your office and working with the industry, I really appreciate that process and the product that we got. I think it was done very, very right, and it was very equitable, and I appreciate that.
Any other question for Glenn?
Just a quick comment here. I would thank you, too, for all your work on this. You did a very nice job putting it all together. I noticed that the ADM has two forms, two sheets, and that the one they X'd out at the owner's request as far as the improvements, and the other one they didn't do that. And I was just curious. I mean, it just seemed they must have missed it on the second one or something. But
no, I think they agreed more with they did have some input to the request of the.
Okay, so they changed their mind maybe or something.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was okay with crossing out those.
Okay.
So I would entertain a motion for adopting the assessment, the resolution.
I so second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Jim. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 16.
I believe one of them already paid it too.
That's awesome.
So that helps.
Agenda item number 16 is the runway mill and overlay project. We have to consider the acceptance of a FAA grant. Glenn.
Yes. We've been planning this mill and overlay project for some time, and I'm going to say years. And it's included in our CIP. It came up for eligibility of funding. We bid the project. It came in under estimate, and we have a grant agreement. We will be receiving a second one from the state, but this one's got to be approved first. So you'll be seeing the agreement for the 5% coming later.
So the status of the project itself?
It's awarded subject to the approving funding.
But
so they're ready to go.
This year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, this year.
Mayor, I'd entertain a motion.
Second.
Motion by Steve, seconded by David. Discussion?
Just a couple of comments here. One, I don't know how fussy they are on the forms, but you forgot to check one of the boxes here. I'll bring that to you. But it says something about it, that the sponsor or the recipient maintains a written standard of conduct governing conflicts of interest. I mean, we meet those requirements and everything.
Yes, we do.
And on one of the letters here, it says that the sponsors authorized or representative must execute the grant, followed by the attorney's certification no later than September 11th.
Right. And we got approval to extend that
So we're not
till
subject
tomorrow.
to that. Okay, so we're okay with
Yep.
that.
Yeah, Glenn, you and I keyed in on that same thing. How
Yep.
can we approve it today when we had to have it done
Right.
tomorrow? But it was a short turnaround.
Simon Schmitz agreed from the state to accept a later date.
Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 17. Agenda item number 17 is the resolution authorizing the execution of the MnDOT Airport Maintenance and Operations Agreement. That's an annual agreement. Any changes that you see should be
No.
pointed out?
It's the same as last year.
And we can pretty much cover our 75% with that, or for the 88.
Yep.
640.
Yep.
I move approval.
Second.
Motion by Craig, seconded by Steve. Discussion? We'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 18. Agenda item number 18, the ballpark parking lot entrance road sidewalk improvement project. We have the final change order to consider, to acknowledge the quantities, and then the final pay application. Anything to add, Glenn?
No.
Questions for Glenn?
I have one.
Yes.
Glenn, again, going back to what the citizens said during the assessment stuff, is there a way to make sure that the work out there is quality and we're meeting?
We have the same requirements there and the same warranty period.
I move approval of change order number 2 with D&G and for final payment.
Motion by Craig.
Second.
Seconded by John. Discussion? If there's no discussion, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 19 is consider the agreement between the City of Marshall and Jane DeVries for a phased retirement program. Sheila.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Jane DeVries will be retiring on November 30th, 2017 from the position of City Clerk. In that position, she performs a variety of responsibilities that are critical to our operations, including but not limited to administration of licensing, coordination of elections, and the custody and control of our official records. The position has been filled. Kyle Box is our new clerk. He is with us tonight, and he started yesterday. So welcome to second day on your job, Kyle. We are requesting council consideration to enter an agreement permitting transition to continue post-retirement on a part-time basis, and that will allow Jane to transfer her knowledge to our new city clerk. PARA, the Public Employees Retirement Association, has a program called Phased Retirement Option that was originated in 2010, and that allows a retiree to continue limited employment post-retirement to accomplish this goal. This request is the same request that we used with Tom Millibrook when we transitioned the duties of Finance Director from Tom Millibrook to Carla Drown. We are the city staff and Jane would find great value in participating in this program. Jane has been gracious enough to already agree to this, and we would have the capability of scheduling her up to 20 hours a week over a 12-month period. We do have an initial training period with Kyle in that being as he started yesterday, and we'll be continuing training through November 30th. We are anticipating that full 20 hours a week won't be needed through the full 12-month cycle into 2018, but we will need a full 12-month period of time for the transition of duties to be complete. And that is primarily due to some of the duties that only occur once a year. One of those is administration of our election activities. That was previously performed in combination. Jane and Tom performed that, and with Tom leaving and Jane taking over those duties, there is no one else currently that understands how to administer a city election. We greatly need her expertise for that. So we do need the entire 12-month period for the transition. We are estimating at this time that we would need likely a total of 16 hours on average over per week over a 12-month period to transition the duties. But as the new clerk is trained in, we would allow Jane to phase off and reduce hours as our new city clerk gets more comfortable within those duties. If the agreement is approved, the city is not responsible for the retiree's health insurance premiums, and the employee no longer accrues leave benefits. The attached agreement, we are requesting approval to last 12 months, and the agreement includes the pay rates from our pay plans that has already been approved by the council for 2017 and 2018. I'm happy to take any questions from the council about that.
Thank you, Sheila. Questions?
You see that this happening with other people that retire, whether it's the city engineer or community services or whatever, where there's always going to be this training period, or?
That has, no one has brought forward that discussion with me. We do have, my last analysis was about 30% of our employee base will be retiring at some point in the next 5 years. So there's a possibility that there could be some of that transition needing to occur. However, in some positions, it won't be necessary, such as police officer. Some of the positions where we have more than one employee in the position, we won't be needing that to occur. But there could be future cases.
As it stands now, there's going to be a 2.5 month training period already.
That is true.
I mean, that seems like a long training period for a position. And then I can understand the election part of it next year. I'm just wondering if the council couldn't put a cap on it, that we're going to have to spend a certain amount for training for the election, because that, I would assume that's the only thing that we need to happen next year.
There are two other things that we need to occur next year. Jane also administers the fire service agreements, which renew in January. The process of renewal begins in January. And there was one other item. I could look at my notes here.
The licenses.
Yeah, there's also heavy work on a new licensor that starts in January. So I understand the need to keep the hours at a minimum. It will be our goal to do that. The program allows for a maximum of 20 hours. We don't anticipate needing that for a full year's time, not even close to that. But what I put in your agenda materials was a maximum total of 16 hours on average per week. We may or may not need that, but I will need her for some of those critical functions.
With regard to that, it says this maximum total of 16 hours on an average per week. So
right.
It's possible in weeks where there's a greater need, it could be more than 16 hours.
But it can't be more than 20.
In 1 week.
We can't hit, right. The para program reads that you cannot have the employee working more than 25% of what their normal working hours were. So with that, Jane cannot work more than 20 hours.
And who will make the decision as to how much training is necessary during that 1 year period?
The new city administrator would.
What's that?
The new city administrator would.
I guess my concern is I'd like to see a cap on this as far as the dollar amount, because, like I said, in most positions, 2.5 months seems like a fairly long training period. And I would think that you could, during that 2.5 months, provide some training about what the election is going to be like next year and what the licensing process is, and take care of all of that training within the 2.5 month period.
We will do the best with the transition that we can in that 2.5 months, but the election is very complicated. I observed the election process last year. There are 3 different locations within the city that need to be coordinated, and I'm not sure I could do that all by myself at this point with only 1 year experience.
That's assuming we're general election. There's always a
Correct.
possibility of a special election.
Well, and you will have a primary election also.
Even though I'm not on the council, you said 25%. Now, is that 20 hours per pay period Or is it 20 hours?
It's a maximum of 20 hours per pay period.
Okay, so that's only 10 hours a week. That's not 20 hours a week then. Because if you're at 25%, I mean, that would mean she's working 80 hours a week. So if it's 20 hours per pay period, that's 10 hours a week, which is significantly less numbers.
The reduced schedule of hours, you must reduce the regularly scheduled hours by at least 25% and not exceed 1,044 hours for the 1 year period.
Reduced by 25, not a okay.
So her max would be 30 according to PERA, but you're saying 20.
Yeah. Okay. I was just confused on the math.
Other questions? Again, the request is has some precedent and also is under the direction of management to manage it.
I move approval of the agreement between the City of Marshall and Jane DeVries for phased retirement, and I make that with thank you, Jane, for being willing to do that and doing that continuity.
Motion by Craig, is there a second? Seconded by Steve. Discussion?
I say likewise. Thank you for all the years. You're going to be busy.
Mr. Mayor, I think, Sheila, when you look at the election stuff, if Jane does get close to going over her hours at that point in time, the Minnesota League of Cities must have something or something. Resources.
We'll manage the hours so that doesn't happen. That is a critical function we need her for, so we will plan for that.
Thank you.
Other discussion on the motion? The other thing I would say, even though it may not have been demonstrated this evening, there is good cooperation with the county on election management. Other discussion on the motion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. Agenda item number 20. Agenda item number 20 is the exempt permit for Southwest Minnesota State University Foundation for an event December 6, 2017. Any questions about this? Is there a motion? Motion by John, seconded by Craig. Discussion? If not, we'll move to a vote. Motion passes. We'll note the abstention. Agenda item number 21. Commission Board Liaison Reports. Actually, mine have not met since we last met. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Library Board met yesterday afternoon. Pretty lengthy meeting. There were some questions about the audits and how we get charged for audits, and some other questions about we are having some problems with lighting and other things within the building. We think that it might be an issue with possibly some discount lighting that was put in by the contractor, and we're working to resolve that. We're going to have Meyer Electric come in first and do some work there to just make sure that we've got proper voltage going to the fixtures, and then get some recommendations from them to look at some things. But I know that as we get into the budget stuff specifically to the library, there's a few things that I think we're going to want to focus on as a council to kind of clean up some of our business operations. And I know Carla's talked to Lou and to Michelle about this, and this is no news to staff, because I know they've been in discussion, but I want to bring it forward that we need to talk about how we manage. Like, I know there were some questions earlier about reserve funds and how we manage and how we identify that, and I just want to say that I will go to the mat and defend the integrity and the work that the library board does to manage that library very professionally and very civically minded, and that they're very mindful of the dollars and the taxpayers' dollars, and how they take care of that. So I'm going to I had more to say, but I'm going to leave it at that, and then I may have some more comments about a couple other things that happened tonight at the individual items. I have to think about how much I want to say here about some of the comments that were made about council. Thank you.
I have no reports.
Planning Commission meets tomorrow, and Housing Commission will meet next week. I would like to make a few comments about the L&O committee and and because that's been an issue I've been discussing lately. And I'm going to read through some of this just so I'm organized in my thoughts. On the agenda for our August 8th council meeting, there was a recommendation by the staff to amend 2 ordinances. And under those ordinances, as presently worded, the Planning Commission is allowed to decide whether building materials that are not specifically listed in the ordinances are considered comparable or superior materials under categories Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, and Class 4. During its May 10th meeting, several members of the Planning Commission indicated they did not feel comfortable making that type of decision. At its June 14th meeting, members of the Planning Commission voted in favor of a motion to recommend that the council amend Ordinance 86-260, removing the words "as approved by the Planning Commission." By doing that, the decision as to whether the materials would be Class 1 to Class 2, Class 3, or Class 4 would be made by city staff. The proposed amendments were discussed by L&O Committee and then forwarded to the City Council as agenda items. And at our August 8th council meeting, I wasn't able to attend that. I had continuing education classes up in Duluth for a couple of days, and I was attending those. But the agenda items were discussed by the council, and the council decided to refer the proposed amendments back to the L&O Committee for further review. I met with city staff yesterday on this issue, and it's my understanding city staff has decided to withdraw its recommendation that the ordinances be amended. In other words, the ordinances would stay the way they are. And what that means is that the Planning Commission members would continue to have the authority to decide whether certain building materials should be classified as Class 1, Class 2, Class 3, or Class 4 materials. Again, this is a very narrow issue that the council was asked to decide on. Basically, again, it was who decides whether the materials are considered Class 1, Class 2, or whatever the classification of the building materials are. If, in fact, we leave it as it is, the decision will continue to be with the Planning Commission. I feel that the city staff has certain expertise and knowledge regarding building materials that maybe members of the Planning Commission don't have. And so I would strongly encourage the Planning Commission members to seek and give serious consideration to recommendations made by city staff. We've had this policy in effect, or this ordinance in effect, for a number of years, and it seems to work very well. We had one incident where the Planning Commission decided it was a comparable material, and there was no expense to the contractor from that action taken by the Planning Commission. And so it's worked well in the past, and I think we feel it'll work well in the future. And if that's the case, if the staff is recommending that we remove that amendment to the ordinances as a agenda item, it's my feeling that there's really no need for the L&O Committee to further research or deal with this issue at this point in time. Like I said, the concerns were that, I think the concerns expressed were that maybe we should leave it with the Planning Commission members. But again, I would seriously encourage them to seek advice from city staff. And it's my feeling at this point that this matter has been resolved, and again, there would not be a need for the L&O Committee to meet regarding this matter. That's what I have to report.
Okay. Maybe some discussion about that later too. So, John?
Okay, although, just to follow up on MMU, although they did not meet, we were informed that MMU did not receive the grant for the soft water treatment facility. We will be getting further follow-up from Brad Rose later this month. Not sure if it's the next regular city council meeting or one of the workshops afterwards. The municipal building group did meet to discuss, actually we had a couple extra people that came in to express their views. my feeling is I thought that it was a very good meeting. We went, we seem to be arriving at a consensus that is much sooner than expected. After reviewing things, we did have 2 members of the committee that are looking into options of really what can be done with, as far as assuming we continue to use the municipal building as it is and do some major renovations, what happens with the employees using the building, and they are researching at least 3 locations, what could be relocated to for temporary purposes, and trying to get an idea on the cost. Also brought up into the discussion, brought up by Glenn Olson, was need to, as well, to do some discussion as far as how do we incorporate in, or what do we do basically with the Marshall Hotel. So we've had a little bit of discussion with that on the group, and that may very well tie into the part of the recommendations that come back from this group and regarding the municipal building. So basically we're moving on, and this I think we're moving along quite well. So
very good. Thank you, John, for your leadership on that, as well as other members, David and David.
My boards have not met.
Jim? So we'll move then to agenda item number 22. Council member individual items. Jim, let's start at your end.
A couple of things. First of all, Glenn, I know that I'm hard on you once in a while, but thank you for your work. Now, with that being said, on customer service, I noticed there's a lot of tracking coming out of our project on Independence Park parking lot there, all the way down Main Street. I had somebody...
In which parking lot?
The parking lot they're doing at Independence Park.
Oh.
You can follow the trucks right in off of, if that maybe, we get into our customer service, if that could be addressed with that contractor tomorrow.
Yes.
Because that is, it's dragging through town pretty good.
I think it just started
today too.
It just started today?
I noticed it yesterday.
Okay.
And I just noticed I have a white truck, and it's like, I don't want this stuff all over my truck.
That's a stormwater MS4.
That's right.
Well, okay, we can say that. I just think it's...
Yep.
So,
We watch it.
Glenn, on the ordinance thing, I know to let it be, but I think that's a discussion we still need to have with the public, because it's still out there that until the ordinance gets revised or redone, you get to the question of, we waive the fees on that. And I think the public is looking at something being done with that ordinance. If we leave it as it is, but we should have a meeting if we leave it as it is, because a lot of the people at that meeting discussed, they wanted it changed, lessened, to have less restrictions. And that came up at that public meeting. So I do think that that's something that still needs to be addressed by L&O or by the council. Because, like I said, it's still hanging out there that we as a council approved no fees until that ordinance gets revised. So something should be done with that.
Could I just address that?
Absolutely.
Okay. I appreciate your point of view on that. And then we discussed this, and I think the idea is this, that if you're going to do more extensive changes to the ordinance than just the change as to who decides whether or not it's comparable materials or what classification it is. If we're going to make significant changes to the overall ordinances regarding the building materials and the appearance, I think there's a feeling that we'd like to hold off on that discussion until we get the new city administrator, because Ben Martek, the former city administrator, had a major role in putting this together. And so I think it's something that we can address and should be addressed, and we should get input from stakeholders and so forth. But it's something I think we felt at this point in time it'd be best just to wait until we get some direction from the new city administrator, and then take up the issue if we feel there's changes that need to be made. And like I said, it's my understanding, a lot of time and effort was put into this, and a lot of input from a variety of people. And so I think we want to take our time and make sure that if we do make changes, that they're the correct changes. And so it's not like we're just trying to put it under a rug and never discuss it. We can discuss this, but I think the idea is that we'd like to get some direction from the city administrator when the new city administrator is hired.
And I'm fine with that, but then we need to let those folks at that meeting know that, because they've been asking me what's going on. And now I know, but we as a city need to let them know, because they're waiting for, because they were told to be invited to this meeting. So a lot of them are waiting for this invitation.
Yeah, but that's a question. You said invite stakeholders. This is an exterior coverage of every building, every house, every business in this community. Who are the stakeholders?
Well,
everybody in the community.
Everybody in the community, yes.
Which is why we give a public notice, which is why we went overboard in noticing it. We do not send out personal invites to public meetings.
And that's
we
fine.
We said invite stakeholders. That's everybody in the community
But
by public notice.
There are people waiting to know what's going on with this. And I'm saying right now they're left in limbo. But now I have an answer of why it is in limbo.
And Jim, you're right. Communication's important.
Very much so. Because
we've seen that tonight here. And I don't know what form of communication, but we can on our website and different places
We've done all of that.
What the plan is. And you're right. You know what it is, but maybe others don't know what it is. But somehow, if we can, we don't have to necessarily give personal notice to everyone. But we can make it generally known. This is what is the plan.
We're waiting till the new administrator comes in.
John, do you have a comment on that?
Just a comment, I guess just a repeat of the comment I made at the public hearing was, we can talk about changes be made, but what I would specifically request, and being part of the L&O committee, is that we get some specifics, just which ordinance is requested change. We had one item on the agenda that was to be discussed by L&O, and that was regarding the classification of the material. I haven't seen anything else come forward that if people want to make a change, it's got to be specific as what type of ordinance, what is the change that is being requested, so we can do a decent job of discussing it. So, I think that information needs to go out to anybody that's involved in this, that we're looking for something, we need specifics on what is it that's being requested to change.
I had not spoken with Glenn. I did not know his recommendation was not, or to just leave it alone. I made that same recommendation to you today. I've gone through 2.5 years worth of agenda items for Planning Commission. Exterior matters came up 3 times in 2.5 years. One of them was dealing with the public school building at Parkside. Only 2 individuals requested a change from the ordinance. And I said, don't blow up the whole ordinance over 2 complaints in 30 months.
And that's fine. We just had a room full of people that we need to communicate to from that meeting. And that's what we need to communicate with them.
You're right.
And on that role of communication, media's gone. That's what I would hope would be the communication.
But maybe they're watching.
Could be.
Maybe.
As long as it gets communicated in the paper that we've discussed it. And that's your public notice.
Right.
Anything else, Jim?
Nope, I'm good.
David?
I couldn't possibly top any of this. So. and even if I could, this isn't the night for it, so I pass.
John?
I'm going to bring it up anyway. I guess I'm going to go back to, we had a room full of people here that were upset, and for some of them, good reason. We do need to have a serious discussion on assessments, and we've talked about fairness and everything else. We use roads all over the place in the city that I drive on, a lot of different roads, or some I don't drive on. I think we need to seriously look at MMU's process of taking care of the assessments and basically spreading it across the community. You don't build a sidewalk just for yourself. You build it for the people who walk on the sidewalk, and it may be your neighbor, it may be somebody from 20 blocks away. So we need to look at this as a community issue. We all are part of this. And I seriously think we need to have, really kind of bring up what Glenn had said before, get rid of the whole assessment process, spread it out across the city, and make this fair for all. The question is, as somebody brought up, what do we do with the ones that are out there? I think that's should be a challenge for our new administrator to take on in the next year. Okay, how do we rectify that and normalize that, but let's get this thing to a clear item and let's get rid of these assessments.
The only thing I would add to that was, anytime we, and I in absolute agreement on the assessment policy needs to be addressed, and the correction to that could be that the assessment portion goes on ad valorem tax and the rest is spread between other sources that it currently is. I think there's multiple sides to every issue. And I know during the project last year I had numerous conversations in the neighborhood, but I also had numerous conversations with the general contractor, which would be in conflict with some of the things that were said this evening. There's no point in getting into an argument about who's right or who's wrong, because the truth usually lies somewhere in the middle there too. So I'm a little uncomfortable with, bashing the contractor, for work that may or may not need to be corrected. That needs to be addressed. So, but we also need to kind of appreciate the local contractors that we do have. With that, I think it's your turn now.
Sure. And Mr. Mayor, thank you for that. And I will say that the landscape piece and Glenn alluded to it, that's a pretty universal problem. Okay, it was down 5th Street a few years ago, 5th and Redwood Street and those in my neighborhood. I know that one of my neighbors, who's kind of a pretty good protester of things, had a weed growing contest to prove a point, and I get it. Okay, so I do think there's work there, but again, I don't want to bash our contractor. I'm sure not going to bash our staff. We need to support our staff and give them the tools and the opportunity to do all the things that we ask and order them to do. Along those same lines, an issue came up, and one of the county commissioners brought forward talking about our TIF funds and TIF balances and those kinds of things, and in my opinion made some pretty broad allegations and accusations, and it's troubling that they would bring them forward, but it's also I think something that we certainly, and we said it then and I'll say it again now, that we really need to look into and decide, is there something here that we need to change what we're doing? And I think some of it is probably that things were just done in the past, and I'm not sure that we really fully understood where everything was at until some of this has been brought to light. So I do think we need to look at that. I don't propose that we hold a large slush fund, as it was said. I do think that we need to be wise and maintain some capital reserve, and especially if we're looking at the TIF things and knowing that TIF is a planned guess at best, or maybe not, guess isn't a good word, but we're really speculating to some degree, but not, I don't think loosely, but I do think that securing and protecting general fund hits with these other funds, I think, is fair, but I also appreciate the letter that the commissioners wrote. So I just want to put that out there. There again, to do due diligence and be mindful of it, and but not get into into these hot matches and sensationalize. I had a number of comments I'd like to have made back to the individual, and thank God I held back.
Well, and certainly, anytime anyone appears before the council, the council needs to be respectful of opinions, even if there's some errors in what was communicated. But just a word about the pooling of the pre-1990 TIF projects, and that's primarily Schwann's and MCP, Minnesota Corn Processors. At that time, there was the pooling, which then provided the security for the financing for the other projects, and it also provided the excess increment financing, and the excess increment was because the investment and the tax capacity increase in those projects far exceeded what that original budget was. That was in particular the case of Schwann's and MCP, and also several other smaller projects, including a housing project on South 4th Street and one on North 4th Street. But that financing of that excess increment that was done, that financed the $7 million that was done, split between downtown redevelopment, that was the redevelopment for the YMCA, as well as the clearing of some of the properties on Block E, as well as the extension of the utilities across the Parkway addition for the airport project, and then that actually then created the Parkway addition. So there was some good reasons for that utilization of the investment that had been made in tax increment financing on those pre-1990 projects. But this is also a really complex issue and probably is worthy of a work session discussion at some time in the future for the council.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate that. I couldn't go home tonight and not park that. Thank you.
Okay. Steve, do you have anything more?
No, John's raising his finger.
Nope. A hand. Just one finger. Hand.
Okay, I'll get to you in a second.
Yep.
So go ahead.
Okay. I guess just on the comments, one of the what was said tonight is made it sound as if it's okay, the city's holding this, but we want the good for the citizens. We got to keep in mind the city is the citizens are the city. We are all one in this, so what is good for the city is good for the citizens. And, we've got to make sure we keep that distinction. We're here as citizens, and we're here because of the citizens, and what we're doing is for the citizens. So
I have a couple of things. The first one is kind of going on the assessment issue that we've kind of talked about. And, there's a couple of things as I look back, even though we're not a huge city, there's enough moving parts that we sometimes have trouble communicating with each other. We're a green city. Communication with some of the opinions out there, about sidewalks. Sidewalks are one of the best things a city can do. And whether people want them or not, again, you build sidewalks, people will use them. I remember during the Schwann Speaker Series, and you were there, Bob, the guy who came and walked said that the new city is going to be out by Walmart, and if you start developing that and build the city for the citizens of the city, that's how you grow a city, because people come and say, this place is great, and start coming. So I think the logistics of the sidewalks, so you don't have to jog and cross, are problematic and challenging, but I think that's important. So I think the assessments and putting an ad valorem and spreading it around would just be a great idea. So I concur with the opinions there, and how you figure out the post ones is the tough.
Yeah, and good comment, Steve. Just one additional comment, and I feel like I'm talking too much here, but the street that was referenced with only on one side, that was a decision because of a very narrow right-of-way. There just simply wasn't room on both sides, so that decision had to be made. It was one side or the other.
Yeah, sometimes it makes sense. Yeah. The second thing is, as a city member voiced concern about a stoplight at the Whitney and College Drive intersection, and apparently it was there years and years ago before I moved to Marshall. When East Side was there.
About 5 years ago they took it down.
No, it's longer.
It was longer than that. It's been gone since I moved.
Time flies.
I wasn't here on Marshall Street for 10, and my kids did paper roads for 5. I think it's only been gone for 5 or 6.
Anyway.
But anyway, it used to be one there, yeah.
Right, but she was very concerned about it, because now we've just made a conditional use permit for the East Side for a bigger daycare, and that's going to be a big issue again. So is it a point that we need to talk to the state, because I'm sure as State Highway 19, it's going to be a state issue. Is it something that we need to do, put it back in there, put a controlled, or at least a controlled intersection like they have in St. Cloud, where the light stops when people are crossing?
They're the ones who took it out to start with.
I think your suggestion is good, that we have a discussion with MnDOT on that, because you're correct. They're the ones that took it out, and maybe a stoplight is the alternative, or maybe a activated pedestrian crossing sign.
Right. Like they have in St. Cloud, where they
Yeah, there might be some solutions, because I agree. There's
especially as they start building little kids. That's just an accident waiting to happen. People just cruised on it.
And they're looking for another expansion.
Right.
Yeah,
So-
that is faster on East College by far and substantially more travel than by
So
West
I would
Side.
just recommend that we bring that up.
Good point. Anything else, Steve?
I have nothing else.
Glenn?
I wasn't going to say anything, but I.
Well, don't think I'll stop you.
Just some quick comments here. Special assessments, I agree that it's something the city should look at and come up with something that the taxpayers feel is a fair system. And as far as the TIF financing in the county and so forth, I'm concerned about the perception of fairness and whether or not the county and the school district think they're being treated fairly. And I do hope we look at that more closely as to what our policy should be as far as decertification. Just a quick question for Glenn. As part of the quality problem because of the deadlines, and you got bad weather and you got the deadlines and they're forced to choose between getting it done or getting it done right, and is the deadlines playing a role in the fact that maybe some of the workmanship isn't up to standard?
No, we're pretty lenient on extending contracts.
So that shouldn't be an excuse.
It shouldn't be an excuse. And we're weather dependent, so we allow that. The biggest thing in delays of projects is when you have a prime and several subs, and one of them moves out of town to do another job for 2 weeks or 3 weeks at a time and doesn't come back in. There's where you get some issues. And when you have major projects like water main replacement, sanitary sewer, storm sewer, gravel work, curb and gutter, asphalt work, you know that you're going to, that it's going to be a timing issue. Now, we do bring that up at our preliminary meetings of length of time and deadlines and contractors coming and going. But I don't think until you've gone through the process yourself with your garage and your driveway, it doesn't really ring at the development meetings. We have instituted those pre-designed meetings with the people in the neighborhood. If you saw that summary sheet I gave you on the special assessment policy, you can see at the bottom that was in 2016, spring of 2016, March 3rd, my mom's birthday. So I remember it pretty well as far as doing the procedure and handing out these requirements to everybody. A year and a half later, do you really remember that? And we want, in some of our projects, we've had meetings at a person's house. Remember the 8th Street one, where Doc kind of coordinated a kind of a group meeting with the neighborhood with our inspectors every week. And we didn't initiate that, the people did. Maybe we should talk about initiating that. So anyone who wants to come at 9 a.m. and the contractor's going to be there, our inspector's going to be there, they can say, when am I going to get into my driveway? We hope that they do that with our inspector who's there every day there's construction activity. Every day. He's there every day that there's construction activity. So that public information is really important to me and our staff.
My last quick comment is I just want to thank you for the work you're doing. I appreciate the work you do.
Our staff is important.
And you really try and work with the taxpayers and the citizens, and you hear the complaints, but you don't always hear about the good things that your office is doing. And it's appreciated because I think you do a first-class job.
Appreciate that.
And I want to say there was a lot of validity to the concerns and complaints that came in, but I also looked at the sheets. I put an X by everybody that spoke or had a comment, and there were a heck of a lot of slots that didn't have X's.
Right.
Anything more, Glenn?
No, that's fine.
The two things, three maybe. First off, earlier this evening we had a special session, identified candidates that will be invited in for interviews on the first week of October. Thank you to Sheila in continuing to serve as the interim. She's been doing an outstanding job, so thank you, Sheila, on that. Yesterday at the 9/11 memorial, Craig, you did a very nice job.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
easy. It's easy to do that, but it's hard.
Right. So it turned out to be really a wonderful, meaningful ceremony, as it has been for, the last 6 years for sure. So since Memorial Park was completed. And then I'd also say it wasn't a city event, but certainly a community celebration. I think we owe a bit of thanks to the organizers of HopFest, which there was really a tremendous crowd and a lot of volunteer effort that went into that. So a nice community celebration this past weekend. With that, let's move to agenda item number 23. Staff reports.
I just have a couple things tonight. In the information-only section of your electronic agendas, there are some additional attachments from what you normally find there. There was a request during one of our work sessions to map out the city's storage facilities for each department. There's a larger map and then smaller maps included that are also color-coded. If you have any questions about those maps, please direct that to either myself or Glenn's department, and we can help answer questions. Glenn Olson also provided me with this binder, which has been scanned in and put into as an attachment into your electronic materials. This is a 2017 annual utility rate survey. This is a compilation of regional water, wastewater, stormwater, and solid water wastewater utility rates, as well as commercial water and wastewater utility rates compiled by AE2S. And Glenn was very excited about this. I have not read it yet, but it must be good.
Sure, it's exciting.
Page turner.
Yes.
It's really good.
And the last thing that I'll report on is that recently city staff have been meeting with some community committee members on our downtown banners and holiday decorations. Some of those banners and decorations have deteriorated with the wind and weather, and some of them are no longer even able to be used. So our committee is reviewing decorations and funding options for those. So more will be coming about that. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Sheila? Glenn?
A comment. I really appreciate the patience of the council in what I try to explain for the assessment process and the individual assessments. We really do try to be fair and equitable and identify every cost associated with their final assessment. What I hear is a few adverse comments, but I think it helps us to develop this, and maybe in the future, if we continue with this assessment process, we will include a summary to each individual property owner of what their street, sidewalk, or street, driveway, sewer assessment is, because it's all here, and anyone that comes in can see it broken out. So we take these meetings seriously, and we want to just make it better. And we're going to work on making assessments better. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. There's a lot in the hopper right now. I believe we are very close to having the Islamic Society purchase another building away from their present house that would be more suitable for their location. We've had an architectural code review of a building they're looking at. Have identified a couple of entrance exit issues, bathroom issues, but no need for sprinkling. That was the big issue. That was the Islamic group was thinking they could not afford a building if they had to put in a significant sprinkler system. The capacity of the facility would be less than 300 people, office, worship area. So I've learned a lot about the standard size of a Islamic prayer rug. Because you have to figure the footage of the area with prayer rugs. You don't worry about putting in pews, tables, chairs. You worry about the standard size of a prayer rug. We're very close. Building officials been working with architect on their behalf to do a review of the code. We're still waiting for construction documents.
Is that a solid purchase option then that they have?
They're looking at a contract for deed purchase of an existing facility, yes. The initial thought was to get a third-party investor who would buy and resell, but I believe the current owner has indicated a willingness to carry the contract for a period of time, so we're close. And, I mean, move them from a building that's not even anywhere close to building code compliant, getting them into a facility. They still have some work to do, but much closer to compliance. Lots more, but I'm going to follow the lead of Councilmember Sturrock. Enough is said. Yes, thank you.
Then the agenda item number 26, the pending agenda items. Any comments on pending agenda items? Agenda item number 27, Sheila referenced the information items before, so I'd refer you to that. You have time. And then agenda item number 28, the upcoming meetings.
Whoops. Numbers over. Excuse me.
And then agenda item
So
number
moved.
29, David. Motion to adjourn, second by, who said that?
Me.
Steve, to adjourn. We'll move to a vote.
Think about it.
Schaefer, don't you dare.
You can always abstain. As
So
well.
the motion passes. We're adjourned.
Thank you for the pen.